Chapter 363. Chapter 362. Don't worry, asking for monthly votes. Since her mother passed away and her brother was separated, Qin Ran felt that the Qin family was not like a home anymore. She admitted that her father loved her from the bottom of his heart, but his way of expressing his love was different from other fathers. However, her father had been focusing on his career these years. Therefore, every time she went back to the Sihiyuan, the house was very lonely and she was the only one there. Therefore, she hated going back more and more, and finally moved out to live alone. Because of this, Qin Ran preferred to hang out with her grandmother and uncle. There was a time when she felt very lonely, and she had been living with her grandparents for half a year. Her uncle would come home for dinner every week, unless he was too busy. Her small aunt also came once a month. Together with other relatives and friends, Qin Ran felt that it was like a home. She had thought that when Qin Sheng came back, the Qin family would feel like a home, but she did not expect that the relationship between Qin Sheng and Qin Chang'an would be so bad. Qin Sheng lacked the warmth of a family since he was a child, and Qin Ran was afraid that he would be disheartened. Fortunately, her grandmother and uncle could make him feel the warmth of a big family. For example, at this moment this feeling was very good. Zhu Weiguo and Qin Sheng drank and chatted to their heart's content. Fortunately, it was the weekend or he would not be able to drink. Qin Ran and Nangong were in charge of pouring wine and taking food. Nangong was very reluctant to serve Qin Sheng, but he had no choice. They were talking about the interesting things when Qin Sheng was a child, intentionally or unintentionally helping Qin Sheng to find the memory of that year. After all, it had been too long, and Qin Sheng was too young at that time, so he could not remember much. But at least Qin Sheng did remember his uncle, Zhu Weiguo, because Tonghulu was his favorite when he was a child. His mother did not allow them to eat sweets, and only his uncle dared to buy it for them secretly. After lunch, Qin Sheng and Qin Ran walked Zhu Weiguo out of the villa. They did not drink much, only a bottle of white wine, which was not a big deal for their drinking capacity. Good boy, your drinking capacity is not bad. I can't accompany you anymore, but after a period of time, when the Zhu family gathers, I will let your generation drink with you. Zhu Weiguo was rarely so happy. During this time, the army had a strict ban on drinking, and he was in a high position. Of course, he had to set an example. But today was the weekend, and it was such a happy event, he had to drink a few. Qin Ran muttered, "Uncle, are you asking eldest cousin to avenge you?" Zhu Weiguo laughed and said, "What are you talking about? Do you think I'm so evil? All right, that's enough. You can all go back. If there's anything, remember to call me." After that, Zhu Weiguo waved at the crowd and quickly walked into the car. He rolled down the window and waved at the crowd again. The crowd didn't look away until the two cars disappeared from their sight. "Uncle is the backbone of our big family," Qin Ran couldn't help sighing. Qin Sheng did not say anything. When he first met Zhu Weiguo and did not know that he was his uncle, Qin Sheng felt that Zhu Weiguo was definitely a big shot in a high position. It was the first time that he had met a man with such a strong aura that made him breathless. Even Qin Chang'an did not have such a strong feeling. At this moment, after seeing the two cars with military plates, Qin Sheng was even more certain of his guess. He was quite familiar with the political rules of the country, especially the license plates of the military. There were many connections behind them. The military plates of his uncle's two cars should be of the highest level in the military. So it was not difficult to guess his uncle's identity. The three of them went back to the living room. Qin Ran made a pot of tea again and said to Qin Sheng, "Grandma has 3 children. Uncle is the eldest, our mother is the second eldest, and our aunt is in Shanghai. Uncle had always doted on his 2 younger sisters, Mom and Auntie, since they were young. So when they grew up, he loved us as well. Our aunt married in the south and didn't come to Beijing often. So Uncle and our mother were very close. When we were young, no matter what we wanted, Uncle would try his best to satisfy us." Qin Sheng nodded and said, Sister, I can feel Uncle's feelings for us. Well, it's good that you know. When you reintegrate into our big family, you will know how many people are waiting for you to come back and how many people love you silently, Qin Ran said sincerely. The little things that happened these days had made Qin Xing feel a different kind of warmth, which he had been missing for more than 20 years. Naturally, he also understood a lot of things. So Qin Xing felt a little sad and said, Sister, I know. Qin Ran didn't want to talk about such a sad topic. She didn't want to give Qin Xing any pressure. She asked casually, Are you used to living here? How are you feeling these days? Qin Xing deliberately joked, It's good here, whether it's the environment or the air. It's just that there's a tigress around, which makes me a little worried. Hearing this, Nangong was furious in an instant. However, Qin Ran was right beside her. She did not have the guts to beat Qin Xing in front of his biological sister. She could only point at Qin Xing and say angrily, It was rare to see someone humiliate Nangong. Qin Ran smiled bitterly and said, What happened to you these days? Nothing, just playing and joking. Qin Xing said happily. Because of the lunch, he was in a much better mood. Qin Ran covered her mouth and smiled. It seems that your relationship is going well. Who has a relationship with him? Nangong said angrily. Qin Ran quickly mediated. Okay. We are a family from now on. We should take care of each other. Qin Xing, you are older than Yezi. As a brother, you should give in to your sister. Don't bully Yezi. Yezi? It was the first time for Qin Xing to hear Nangong's name. Was it Nangong Yi? This name was not bad. He said half-jokingly, Then call me brother first. Believe it or not, I will beat you. Nangong was more and more angry. Qin Xing wanted to continue to tease Nangong, but was stopped by Qin Ran. She smiled and said, Okay, stop playing. Qin Xing, I want to talk to you about something serious. Qin Xing put away his playfulness and looked at Qin Ran seriously. Sister, you say it. Now that you have returned to Beijing, do you have any specific plans? For example, what do you want to do? Qin Ran asked tentatively. Of course, Qin Chang'an hoped that Qin Xing would enter the company and start to inherit his business step by step. But Qin Ran wanted to know Qin Xing's intention. Qin Xing didn't avoid it anymore. He said seriously, Sister, I want to tell you that I plan to meditate for a few months and think about my life. After I figure out a lot of things, I will make a decision. During this period, I can learn something to enrich myself. So when I go back in 2 days, I want to live in Hadian. Isn't there a university there? I can go back to the campus life. Since Qin Xing had said so, Qin Ran didn't make things difficult for him. She also thought that some things could not be rushed. Even if she asked Qin Xing to take over the family business now, he might not agree. So Qin Ran said, Okay, then I will listen to you. You don't need to worry about these things. I will arrange it for you when I go back. Okay. Qin Xing nodded silently. This was the decision he made after careful consideration. Since he graduated from university, he had never studied systematically again. Except for the habit of persevering in reading books, he had always been living off what he had earned. Some things made him feel powerless, especially when he was in Hangzhou. Without the help of Ms. and the others, he was afraid that he would not be able to bear the responsibility. So during this period, he was not in a hurry to do anything. First, so many things had happened, he needed time to digest and accept. Second, he had not sorted out the contradiction and relationship with Qin Chang'an. Third, he needed to figure out the background of the Qin family and the Zhu family so that he could reposition himself. Therefore, he could take advantage of this time to learn something. The best universities in China were all in Beijing. Of course, he would take advantage of such time and opportunity. After talking about these things, Qin Ran joked, Do you need me to continue to accompany you here? Qin Xing laughed and said, Sister, I'm not a 3-year-old child. I won't do anything out of line. You don't need to accompany me. You must have a lot of things to do. Okay, then I will go back in a while. During this period I have missed a lot of work. I will let Nangong accompany you here." That was exactly what Qin Ran meant. Nangong muttered a few words in a low voice. She was not here to accompany Qin Sheng, but to monitor him. After chatting with Qin Sheng for a while, Qin Ran drove back to the downtown area. That day, Zhu Weigua sent a driver to pick her up, so her car was parked in the housing estate these 2 days. After it snowed intermittently for 3 days, the snow finally stopped. It seemed that it was only snowing in the mountains, and it was only cloudy in the downtown area these 2 days. These 2 days, Qin Sheng and Nangong did not have any contradiction. They were busy with their own things and did not disturb each other. Qin Sheng read, jogged, and exercised every day, while Nangong stayed in the living room and watched dramas. She only followed Qin Sheng when he went out. It was not cold when it snowed, but when the snow melted, it would be very cold in the mountains in the following days. Therefore, Qin Sheng did not intend to continue to stay at Yanqi Lake. The night before, he had called his sister and said that he would go back to the downtown area the next morning. Qin Ran had intended to pick Qin Sheng up, but was politely refused by Qin Sheng. In the end, Qin Ran had to send Qin Sheng her location and let Nangong send Qin Sheng there. Aunt Zhao stayed in the villa to pack things. She would send someone to send them to Qin Sheng later. As for Qin Sheng's matter, Qin Ran called Qin Chang'an after that day. After all, she could not make a decision on her own. She had to care about her father's feelings, so she discussed it with her father. Qin Chang'an still did not have any opinion on it. He could do whatever Qin Sheng wanted to do. He gave Qin Sheng enough time to buffer. He had persisted for so many years, so he did not care about a few months. Others all thought that Qin Chang'an's family was rich and had a lot of connections. It seemed that he was very popular and everyone was in awe of him. However, Qin Chang'an himself felt that sometimes he was just a pitiful loner. Therefore, Gongsun was the only one who really understood him. Chapter 364. The Rich Qin Ran, the second update is here. Asking for monthly votes and support. If Qin Sheng was willing to take the initiative to understand his father's life, he would know how difficult his father's life was. Maybe most people would not have such a life. Qin Sheng was raised by his mother. The man he called father was elusive. Sometimes he would stay at home for half a year, and sometimes he could only see him a few times a year. When he was young, his mother passed away, which was the first big setback in his life. Since then, he and his brother depended on each other and were fostered in a friend's home. They were no different from orphans. When he was 30, he experienced the biggest change in his life. His wife passed away, his son was taken away by his father, and his brother became a monk, leaving only his daughter to depend on. His life almost collapsed. His only daughter was not close to him and had been complaining about him for so many years. In fact, he was like a lonely man. When he was old, his father passed away without informing him. He was not even qualified to see him off. He finally found his long-lost son, but because of some things, he had conflicts with his son. As for the so-called setbacks and sufferings in these years, they were nothing to Qin Chang'an. From an ordinary person to where he was today, if he did not experience ups and downs, it would be too easy to succeed. There were successful people everywhere in this society, not more ordinary people. Qin Ran borrowed a house from a friend in Longhu Tongning 1, Zhongguancun East Road, Haidian District. It was just a 5-minute walk to the south of Tsinghua University. It was also very close to Peking University. After all, these two universities were next to each other. When Nangong and Qin Sheng arrived, Qin Ran was already waiting in the house. This was a 3-bedroom, luxuriously decorated house. After all, the price of this community was not low. When it was first opened, it was sold out. After all, the surrounding area was full of universities. On the way, Qin Sheng and Nangong quarreled a lot. This was also Qin Sheng's only way of entertainment at present. However, he was afraid that one day he would offend Nangong. At that time, the consequences would be unimaginable. After Qin Sheng and Nangong came in, Qin Ran took Qin Sheng around and asked, "How is it?" Actually, Qin Sheng did not have any requirements for accommodation. He had lived in all kinds of places over the years. He had even slept on the streets. As long as he had a warm place, he would be fine. "It's pretty good. I like this study," Qin Sheng said with a smile. The study was very beautiful. The whole wall was made of cherry wood, and there was a huge globe next to it. However, there were no books on the shelf, so it lacked the scent of books. Qin Ran chuckled and said, "I've already bought all the necessities for you. Everything is new. Aunt Zhao will come over to take care of you. She will cook and clean for you every day." Qin Sheng wanted to live on his own. He had been used to being alone all these years. He really did not want others to take care of him. Meals could be taken care of outside. If he was in a good mood, he could do it himself. As for cleaning and washing clothes, he could do it himself. Consequently, Qin Sheng rejected her politely as he said, "Sister, you don't have to bother Auntie Zhao. I want to live alone. I can handle these things." "Really?" Qin Ran did not insist. She was willing to respect any of his opinions. Qin Sheng hugged Qin Ran's shoulders and said, "Really? I know you are worried about me. If you are worried, you can come to see me every few days." "Okay, I'll listen to you," Qin Ran said happily. It seemed that her brother was used to being independent. However, this was a good sign. One had to take care of himself first in order to be able to take care of others. After chatting with Qin Ran, Qin Sheng said to Nangong beside him, "Do you still want to keep watching me? There are so many people in the university. You are so beautiful. There should be many college students who are willing to talk to you. I'm afraid that you won't have time to take care of me then." Nangong snorted and said, "You don't have to worry about this." Qin Ran did not know whether to laugh or cry. Qin Sheng and Nangong were really enemies. In the past, no one dared to quarrel with Nangong. Otherwise, they would have been beaten by Nangong. After all, few ordinary men could beat Nangong. At this time, Qin Ran took out a business card from her bag and handed it to Qin Sheng. She said, "By the way, about your study, Tsinghua University's School of Economics and Management happened to have a 3-month study class. I used my connections to sign you up. The class will officially start tomorrow. The lecturers are all senior professors of the School of Economics and Management and the consultants of the School of Economics and Management Advisory Committee. You should know that the consultants of the School of Economics and Management are all domestic and foreign business tycoons, as well as high-level ministers and retired old leaders." Qin Sheng was surprised. Originally, he just wanted to go to the class casually. He did not expect that Qin Ran would sign him up for such a powerful class. Tsinghua University's School of Economics and Management was the top school in the country. These years, it had been fighting with Guanghua School of Management of Beijing University openly and secretly. However, in recent years, it had shone brightly, especially the School of Economics and Management Advisory Committee. The list of names was enough to beat any institution. The honorary chairman of the advisory committee was Qin Sheng's idol. This class should not be simple. The number of places must be limited. One could not get into it even if he had money. The class would officially start tomorrow. The registration should have already ended. However, he could catch the last bus. Presumably, it was not only his sister's idea. There must be Qin Chang'an's manipulation behind the scenes. Qin Sheng's guess was right. After Qin Ran told Qin Chang'an about this, Qin Chang'an inquired about this matter of the School of Economics and Management. Not to mention his relationship with the School of Economics and Management, many of the consultants and tycoons in the School of Economics and Management were his friends and distinguished guests. Consequently, this matter was not difficult for him. It was a good thing that Qin Sheng wanted to study. However, Qin Chang'an would not let him waste his time blindly. This class was just right for him. Basically, the students in the class were the children of rich and powerful families who had already taken over the class. It was just right for Qin Sheng to gradually get in touch with this circle. Qin Sheng was stunned and did not know what to say. He was a philosophy major. As for the aspect of economics and management, he was good at economics and finance. After all, he had attended a lot of classes at that time. However, he had only read a few books on management. Don't think so much. The curriculum is not that tight. There are only 4 classes a week. You can manage the rest of the time. As for the homework, you can ask me if you don't understand it. Your sister graduated from Tsinghua University with a master's degree in economics and management, Qin Ran said confidently. That was why Qin Chang'an had such a good relationship with the School of Economics and Management. It was because he had donated a lot to the School of Economics and Management. Since Qin Ran had arranged it in this way, even though he knew that it might be Qin Chang'an's manipulation, Qin Sheng had no way to refuse. After all, such an opportunity was not available to everyone. The teachers here were definitely the best in the country. They could understand the political and economic structure of the top level of China. Qin Sheng nodded and agreed as he said, "Okay, I will listen to you." Qin Ran finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fearing that Qin Sheng would refuse, she handed the business card to Qin Sheng and said, "This is a director of the School of Economics and Management. I won't send you there tomorrow. You can contact him directly." Qin Sheng said thoughtfully, "Well, okay." Qin Ran patted Qin Sheng's shoulder and said, "Okay, let's not talk about this. I will take you to dinner and buy you some clothes and daily necessities." Qin Ran took Qin Sheng out. This time, Nangong did not follow them. She left in advance. She still wanted to ask Uncle Gongsun what she should do next. Qin Ran knew this place very well. After all, she had stayed in Tsinghua University for 6 years. She knew clearly where the delicious restaurants were. After that, she took Qin Sheng to have a haircut. His hair was too long. He needed a new hairstyle to welcome a new life. Finally, she took Qin Sheng to the shopping center and bought several sets of clothes for him, including 4 sets of different styles that he usually wore, 3 sets of more formal ones, and other matching things. The whole trunk was filled by Qin Ran. Qin Sheng was most afraid of shopping. However, this was his sister's kind intention. He could not refuse. Thinking about it, the clothes that his sister bought for him during this period were more than all the clothes he had bought in the past 2 years. When they came back after dinner, it was already 8 o'clock in the evening. It could be seen how long they had been shopping today. Qin Ran handed 2 bank cards to Qin Sheng and said, "One is a CITIC savings card. The money in it is enough for you to buy anything. The other is a Centurion Black Gold card of China Merchants Bank. I forgot the limit. The password is the last 6 digits of your mobile phone number." Qin Sheng was shocked. He knew about the Centurion Black Gold card of China Merchants Bank. It was a top credit card. It was said that it had an unlimited limit. The lowest limit was millions. This was the first time that Qin Sheng had seen it. As for the CITIC savings card, there must be a lot of money in it. Qin Sheng had seen the world since he was a child. However, it was the first time that he had come into contact with so much money. So he said uneasily, "Sister, I have money. It's enough. Don't refuse. These are all given to you by the old man. Our family is not short of money. If you don't spend it, I won't spend it. Do you want others to spend it?" Qin Ran said generously. This amount of money was really nothing to the Qin family. Not to mention the old man's assets, her own savings were enough to buy anything she wanted. Qin Sheng took it in the end. However, he thought that he would not need it. Qin Ran then handed Qin Sheng a car key and said, "This is a Mercedes-Benz GLS. You can use it first. If you don't like this car, you can buy whatever you want. As for the license plate, you don't have to worry about it. Just let me know." Qin Ran's expression at the moment said, "Our family is rich. As long as it can be done with money, it is not a problem for our family. Even if you want to buy an ordinary listed company, it is not a problem for our family." Qin Sheng had never been poor since he was a child. When he was a child in Beijing, everything was the best. Later, he went to Xi'an. The Lin family was also rich in Xi'an. As for these 2 years, needless to say, although they did not have a lot of money, they had never been short of money. During the 2 years of traveling, their life was more difficult. However, that was also the most interesting time. However, it was the first time for Qin Sheng to experience such a situation. It was also the first time for him to have so much money, which made him a little overwhelmed. However, he knew that this was just the beginning. Based on his current understanding of the Qin family, the wealth they had was beyond his imagination. Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "As long as the car can be driven, it's fine. I don't have any requirements." Qin Ran said softly, "Well, I know that you don't have any requirements and you don't care about these things, but I do. You should have enjoyed the best life like me. However, you have suffered for so many years and suffered for so many years. So you deserve these." Qin Sheng did not say anything else. Otherwise, he would make his sister unhappy. So he held Qin Ran's hand and said, "Okay, I will listen to you. I will be a rich playboy from now on. I will kill whoever I don't like with money." Qin Ran covered her mouth and smiled sweetly as she said, "Are you angry with me?" Qin Sheng laughed out loud. He had never thought that he would have a sister who loved him so much. It seemed that he did not need to worry about anything in the future. It was getting late. Qin Sheng had to familiarize himself with the environment the next day. Qin Ran reminded Qin Sheng a few more words and left directly. After Qin Ran left, Qin Sheng looked at the 2 cards and the car key on the table thoughtfully. His life had been completely different. However, Qin Sheng could not lose himself because of these things. In that case, he would not be himself. Chapter 365. A strange opening remark. Today's chapter was about classmates getting married. After all, it was the holidays and everyone was getting married. Qin Sheng had lived in the Lin family since he was a child. He had seen many so-called rich people with Uncle Lin and understood their lives. The lives of the local tycoons with different identities and routes were also different. Even the upstarts in northern Shaanxi, who became rich by coal mines, had a very different attitude towards life. Most of them were poor beyond imagination. Some people still insisted on living a frugal and simple life after they became rich, while most people became completely unscrupulous after they became rich. Qin Sheng used to imagine what kind of life he would live after he became famous. He thought that he would still be low-key. After all, he was not a high-profile person. Moreover, as he moved forward step by step, his state of mind would gradually sink. However, Qin Sheng never thought that one day his life would suddenly become like this. From a loser to a super-rich second generation, there was a huge difference in an instant. Qin Sheng suddenly felt a little afraid that he would lose himself and forget his most real self. Therefore, Qin Sheng had to take advantage of this period of time to settle his state of mind. Only by laying a solid foundation could the future go smoothly. 3 months of study time, plus the holidays and the spring festival in the middle, it was estimated that the study class would end in April next year. Qin Sheng subconsciously walked into the study. He was not used to the bare bookshelf. After all, he was a person who liked to deal with books. Therefore, he would go to the bookstore tomorrow. In the morning, Qin Sheng got up very early. Last night, he smoked quietly in the study, took a bath and went to sleep. He did not have the habit of recognizing his bed, so he fell asleep very quickly. The ingredients in the kitchen were all prepared by Qin Ran. The refrigerator was filled with all kinds of food. Qin Sheng made some breakfast casually: eggs, fruits, milk and bread. After breakfast, Qin Sheng went out to report to the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University. He did not drive the GLS. After all, it was so close. He could walk there and familiarize himself with the surrounding environment and feel the atmosphere of Tsinghua University. The city was very cold after the heavy snow. The northwest wind was like a knife scratching his face. However, Qin Sheng was dressed very warmly, wrapped in the new down jacket he bought yesterday, wearing a hat and a scarf, as if living in the Arctic. On the way from Longhu Tongning 1 to Tsinghua University, one could see many students chatting and laughing in groups of 2s and 3s. After all, the top talents of China were gathered here. Qin Sheng was more interested in Wadayaku, which was not far away. After all, it was known as Wadayaku, the center of the universe. If there was a chance, he could go to Tsinghua University's Wadayaku School of Finance. He had heard from Lao Er that he had studied there before. Although Qin Sheng had never been to Tsinghua University, he was not a stranger to it. After all, this university was too famous and had too many stories and legends. However, it was a bit too big. Qin Sheng somewhat regretted that he did not drive. He had been walking for at least half an hour, but he had not found the School of Economics and Management yet. No wonder his sister would leave a car for him. Since he got up early, Qin Sheng walked slowly. He took the opportunity to feel the cultural atmosphere of this century-old institution and to find the feeling of campus life when he was in Fudan University. In the blink of an eye, 4 or 5 years had passed. It was as if nothing had happened last night. The architecture of Tsinghua University was very distinctive. After all, the architecture department of this university was well known both at home and abroad. Of course, the environment was excellent. There were flowers, trees, and greenery everywhere. Walking along this main road, Qin Sheng could see the magnificent central main building of Tsinghua University from afar. However, he preferred to observe the students he met on the way. He remembered that in the movie German Empire, Bismarck, the Prime Minister of Iron and Blood, had said that the glory of the empire today had been decided on the desks 100 years ago. Qin Sheng firmly believed this sentence. For example, the investment in education in Japan after the Meiji Restoration, the educational environment in the United States over the past hundreds of years, and so on. It seemed that countries that had always been able to become world powers had invested a lot in education. Because in this era, talents determined everything. With talents, a country could develop in all aspects, especially in heavy industry and high technology, which were the foundation for a country to gradually become strong. Therefore, these geniuses in front of him were the backbone of the future republic. Whether this nation could stand proudly on the top of the world again depended on their future efforts. The official class started at 10 o'clock. So Qin Sheng rushed to the School of Economics and Management at 9 o'clock. At this time, the students had already started their classes. Qin Sheng took out his business card and dialed the number of the deputy director. After the phone was connected, he introduced himself. The deputy director politely asked Qin Sheng to wait downstairs, and he would come down to pick him up immediately. After waiting for a few minutes, a man wearing glasses and a down jacket came down. The man seemed to be in his 30s. It was already amazing that he could be the deputy director of Tsinghua University at this age. "Hello, are you Qin Sheng? I'm Fong Huawei. Junior sister Xiao Ran has already told me about you," the man said very politely. Qin Sheng also responded with a smile. "Hello, Director Fong. Fong Huawei also graduated from the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University. However, after graduating with a master's degree, he stayed in school. His family more or less had some connections in the education system, so he went step by step until today. Qin Ran could be considered as his junior sister. His father-in-law was a famous economist and also a senior professor in the School of Economics and Management. When Qin Ran was a postgraduate, her mentor was his father-in-law, so they had more contact. Fang Huawei more or less knew something about the Qin family, especially Qin Ran's father, who was a VIP of Tsinghua University. In recent years, he had donated a lot to Tsinghua University and had more cooperation with the School of Economics and Management. Many big shots of the School of Economics and Management later went to the company under the Qin family. However, he was not clear about the relationship between Qin Xing, Qin Ran, and the Qin family. But since they had the same surname, he must be a member of the Qin family. Otherwise, the dean would not have personally added a place at the last moment for such an important class. Only Qin Ran's father could have such a big face. Fang Huawei went straight to the point and said, "You don't have to be so polite. Just call me Brother Fang. I have a good relationship with junior sister Xiao Ran. Her supervisor when she was a postgraduate student was my father-in-law." He was very willing to keep in touch with the Qin family, so he directly pointed out their relationship, which could also make him and Qin Xing closer. Qin Xing smiled slightly and said, "Okay, then I will call you Brother Fang. Haha, let's go. I will take you to go through the formalities first. We will talk about other things on the way," Fang Huawei said happily. Qin Xing replied, "Thank you, Brother Fang." Therefore, Fang Huawei took Qin Xing into the main building of the School of Economics and Management. First, they went to the office in charge of the class to go through the registration formalities. On the way, they had a good chat. Qin Xing did not care about his relationship with Qin Ran. He directly said that Qin Ran was his sister. Fang Huawei thought that she was his cousin, because he knew that Qin Xing had no younger brother, and his father only had this only daughter. If he were the same age as Qin Ran, he would definitely pursue Qin Ran without hesitation. After all, if he married into the Qin family, he would directly stand at the peak of his life. Almost everyone finished the formalities yesterday and came directly to the class today. Qin Xing was the last one. The formalities were not complicated. It was very simple. It did not take long to finish. Fang Huawei followed Qin Xing to their classroom. At the door of the classroom, Fang Huawei stopped and said, "The classroom is right here. I won't go in. Your classmates should have already arrived. The person in charge of your class is the deputy dean of the college. But if there's anything, you can call me directly." Fang Huawei said. "Thank you, Brother Fang," Qin Xing said politely. Then he asked, "Brother Fang, do you have time at noon? I want to treat you to lunch. Firstly, I thank you. Secondly, I have something to ask you." Of course, Fang Huawei would not miss such an opportunity. However, he had to be reserved as a cultured person. He could not appear to curry favor with people in power. So he hesitated for a while and said, "Well, I have a meeting later. I don't know when it will end. But you just started the class this morning. You should only get to know each other and then learn about the curriculum, teachers, and so on. You can send me a message when you finish, and then we will make an appointment." "Okay, then I will listen to you," Qin Xing said casually. Fang Huawei nodded and left with a smile. Qin Xing pushed the door and walked into the classroom. This classroom was not the kind of ordinary undergraduate classroom. Instead, it was like a circular auditorium with a staircase. The seats were distributed around the lecture hall in the middle. The wall directly opposite was a whole black list. There were projectors hanging on the left and right side. It was a very academic atmosphere. At this time, the classroom was already full of people. Everyone was getting to know each other. After all, on the one hand, they came here to study. On the other hand, making connections was another. Nowadays, all the business schools in China were like this. The famous ones, such as the Zhong'o Business School and the Changjiang Business School, had a very strong student association. In front of each seat, there was a nameplate with a different name. Qin Shing randomly looked for the seat that belonged to him. Finally, he found it on the side. He took his things and walked over. On the way, the students he met all greeted him politely. Qin Shing just smiled and nodded in response. He did not stop to chat with them. When he sat down, he was about to observe these students who would stay with him for 3 to 4 months. After all, they were all children of rich and powerful families. At this time, a guy sitting next to him took the initiative to say hello. "Hey, buddy, who gave you this name? I thought it was Qin Shing from Shanghai Xinhua. If it was really that guy, I must beat him up. He made me lose a lot of money." Chapter 366. I Know You. This was the first time Qin Shing had heard someone trying to get close to him like this. Wasn't he afraid of being beaten up when he went out like this? He looked at the guy in front of him and finally understood why he was such a weirdo. This guy was the weirdo in the entire classroom. On the way just now, Feng Huawei had already told Qin Shing about this advanced course in detail. It was not a traditional EMBA gold-plated class. Otherwise, what was the difference between it and the business schools that were flooding everywhere nowadays? It could be seen from the lecturers this time that they were all top-notch in Tsinghua University. They had even invited many members of the advisory board, including domestic and foreign business tycoons and senior officials of ministries and commissions. First of all, the process was not free registration. Instead, it was an invitation system. Those who could be selected were not ordinary people. At the very least, their parents' generation was a leading figure in their respective industries and provinces. Secondly, they were all young people, no more than 35 years old. Their goal was to cultivate future business leaders for China. Therefore, when the class started today, almost everyone was dressed very formally. Even after Qin Shing took off his down jacket, he was wearing a more exquisite suit underneath. But the guy next to him was completely different. Not to mention the fact that his hair was gray and he had earrings. Just the gaudy clothes alone were enough to attract attention. The loose hip-hop jacket, cap and gold chain, t-shirt with a big skull embroidered on the chest, baggy jeans and Jordan sneakers. No wonder the others only knew each other in 2s and 3s. Nobody paid any attention to this guy who was sitting here, which made him look awkward. He probably did not know the others. It was not until Qin Shing, who was sitting next to him, came over that he took the initiative to greet him. "Ha ha ha, bro, you're really humorous." The man in hip-hop clothes patted Qin Shing's shoulder and laughed out loud. However, the strength of the pat was a bit too much. If Qin Shing had not practiced before, he would probably be choked. Qin Shing was speechless as he said, "I think it's a miracle that you can live until now." The hip-hop guy was quite good-looking, but he had a beard that didn't match his age. He looked a little cynical, and his eyes were filled with contempt. It seemed that he was ashamed to be associated with the other students. "You don't say. I've always been in fights since I was young. If I can solve things with my hands, I won't compete. Men should be so tough. If you're not satisfied, then go for it. Fortunately, I have an awesome father. Otherwise, I would not be able to live until now." The man in hip-hop clothes did not care about Qin Shing's sarcasm and replied straightforwardly. He almost lit up a cigarette and said silently, "You don't understand my world." Then, he would sing a rap song. Qin Shing did not care about him. Although he studied philosophy and was used to figure out the spiritual world of others, he couldn't even take care of himself recently. Had no time to care about others. Moreover, none of the people he had met recently was a coincidence. He was really afraid that Qin Chang'an had arranged this buddy to meet again. Qin Shing packed up his things and took out the handbook that Feng Huawei had given him. There were detailed schedules, teachers, and other extracurricular activities in the handbook. Compared with the hip-hop man, he was more interested in these. After all, he really wanted to learn something. Unlike the others, who either had strength or experience, he had to do more homework than others. Qin Shing did not pay attention to this guy, but this guy was cheeky enough to approach him and said, "Bro, my name is Han Su. I'm from Tianjin. How do I address you?" 5-inch you. You. I said, I you. I got something. You. You. Look at the others, all of them are so sanctimonious. They're really not interesting at all. When Qin Shing heard this guy's name, he almost burst out laughing. Han Su was really not reserved at all. He replied casually, "Qin Shing, from Xi'an." Han Su said to himself, "People from the northwest are forthright and loyal. I also like Xi'an. It's a famous historical and cultural city, where the Zhou, Qin, Han, and Tang dynasties were flourishing. But I haven't been there yet. If I have a chance in the future, I will definitely go there. Don't think I'm bothering you then." "Oh," Qin Shing replied and continued to read the manual. Qin Shing was not interested, and Han Su did not care. Anyway, he was just killing time. Thinking that he had to study here for 4 months, he felt a little aggrieved. If it were not for the sake of buying the Aston Maydine, which was worth tens of millions, he would not come here to study even if he was beaten to death. "Qin Shing, did you take the initiative to come, or were you forced by your family?" "I was forced. My father said that if I didn't come, he would directly cut off my financial support. These old men, what era are we in? They still insist that we inherit the so-called career. Nowadays there are so many talents in the society. We just need to find a capable professional manager. As long as we firmly control the equity in our hands, if they can't do it well, we can continue to replace them." Han Su began to talk about his principles, regardless of whether Qin Shing listened to him or not. Originally, Qin Shing did not want to pay attention to him. But he still could not help but reply, "It's not easy for your father's generation. You will know in the future." Han Su continued to mutter, "You don't have to talk about these principles to me. I like to enjoy life and pursue freedom. My father has been strange recently. In the past, he didn't care about me at all. In one sentence, as long as I don't make trouble, I can do whatever I want. This month, he suddenly changed his attitude. He insisted that I enter the company to study and then asked me to come to this class. I'm puzzled. Qin Shing really didn't want to pay attention to him. Fortunately, at this time, the side door next to the podium opened. A very elegant and spirited man walked in from outside. The man was not a gray-haired old man. On the contrary, he looked very young, less than 40 years old. He wore glasses, was not tall, had a smile on his face, and walked steadily. Behind him were 2 young people, a man and a woman. Just now, Qin Shing had already seen the information about this man from the handbook. He was the deputy dean of the School of Economics and Management and also the head teacher of this advanced study class. He became the deputy dean of the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University before 40 years old. Apart from being awesome, he was also awesome. As for his resume, he was an existence worthy of worship. After seeing this man come in, everyone immediately quieted down and returned to their own seats, seriously waiting for the head teacher to speak. The opening ceremony was very simple. There were no complicated procedures, no leader's speech, and so on. After a brief self-introduction, Dean Su introduced some specific matters of this advanced study class in detail. The group of geniuses below all put away their usual arrogance and listened attentively. Only Han Su, who was next to Qin Shing, looked bored. He directly took out his mobile phone and began to play Honor of Kings. Qin Shing really admired this guy. Many people could not step into the door of this classroom even if they racked their brains. However, he came in so easily, but did not cherish such an opportunity at all. This kind of person was really a playboy. After Dean Su finished speaking, everyone applauded. Then Dean Su began to arrange for everyone to introduce themselves, which could be regarded as students getting to know each other and getting along better in the future. Including Qin Xing, there were a total of 31 students in this class, 12 of whom were female. The ratio of male to female was very harmonious, and there were many beauties. Most of these students had already worked in family businesses, and a small number of them had started their own businesses. Relying on their background and resources, they had also made some achievement. Therefore, when everyone introduced themselves, they basically said their name, age, where they were from, what company they were currently working in, what position they held, and what interests they had. Some people would also say about their character and so on. Qin Xing listened very carefully. It seemed to be a simple self-introduction, but there was a complicated world behind everyone. At the same time, he also observed the details of these students and found that they all had one thing in common, that was, they had a kind of confidence from the inside out. This was the difference between the children of rich and powerful families and ordinary people. This kind of confidence was not innate, but gradually trained in the acquired family and educational environment. Most ordinary people were quite self-abased. One by one, they introduced themselves. It did not take long for the last two to come. They were Qin Xing and Han Su. Han Su was playing the game in full swing. Qin Xing did not notice that this guy was still playing the game. He had to quickly stand up and take the lead to speak. At the same time, he kicked this guy with his foot. Qin Xing, from Xi'an, Qin Xing said very simply. Then he sat down because he really had nothing to introduce, and he was not as excellent as the others. Everyone stared at Qin Xing with different expressions. Some people were curious, some felt that Qin Xing was different, and some thought that Qin Xing was deliberately attracting attention. They sneered at him. After Qin Xing sat down, Han Su stood up immediately and said, "My name is Han Su, from Tianjin. I am 18 years old every year." After that, Han Su also sat down without any nonsense. All the people present burst into laughter. Everyone's attention from Qin Xing was instantly shifted to Han Su. Compared with Qin Xing, Han Su was more eye-catching. After all, this guy wore a hip-hop concert outfit and came to attend the advanced study class. Dean Su, who was on the podium, did not know whether to laugh or cry. It did not occur to him that he would meet two students who were so different. However, he was not angry about it. He helped to solve the problem. Since everyone has known each other, then I will continue, as Dean Su spoke. Everyone's attention was finally drawn back. Only a few people were still looking at Qin Xing and Han Su. After Han Su sat down, he muttered in a low voice, "Buddy, thank you. I will treat you to a meal later." Qin Xing did not agree. After all, he had made an appointment with Fang Huawei to have lunch at noon. He wanted Fang Huawei to help him find the curriculum of the major that he was interested in, as well as some professors' lectures and so on. He thought that Fang Huawei would not refuse such a small thing. Dean Su spoke for another half an hour. Before 12 o'clock, he announced the end of the opening ceremony. The first class would start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This famous economist, who was also an old professor of Tsinghua University, would give a lecture on economics. Qin Xing put away his things and went out directly. Han Su chased after him and shouted, "Qin Xing, let's go for lunch. What do you want to eat? It's my treat." Qin Xing refused euphemistically, "I have something else to do." Han Su muttered, "Buddy, give me some face. You helped me just now. It's natural for me to treat you to a meal. I, Lao Han, never owe others a favor." Qin Xing said directly, "If you really want to treat me, let's make an appointment another day. I really have something to do today." Han Su thought that Qin Xing really had something to do, so he did not insist anymore. After all, Han Su was also a big shot in Tianjin City. If he went to the Binhai New area to inquire about the Han family's strength, everyone knew it. After Qin Xing and Han Su parted, He sent a text message to Feng Huawei, telling him that he had finished his work and asking him if he had time. In less than 2 minutes, Feng Huawei called and told Qin Sheng that he had finished his work. He asked Qin Sheng to wait downstairs for a while, and would come down soon. Just when Qin Sheng was waiting for Feng Huawei and looking at the Deputy Dean Su's information today, a man, who was also a student of the advanced course with Qin Sheng, walked slowly to Qin Sheng and said, "I know you." Qin Sheng looked up at the man in front of him in surprise. He had already recognized him as his classmate today. However, he could not remember his name. After all, he was a little distracted at that time. The man did not wait for Qin Sheng to speak and said, "You may not know me, but I know you. Hangzhou cc Yuerong Manor." Chapter 367. What a weirdo! Hangzhou cc Yuerong Manor. These 3 keywords had already made Qin Sheng understand what the man in front of him wanted to express. This man knew him. Moreover, he had gotten to know him during the incident with Yan Chaozong and Chu Huanxi at Hangzhou Yuerong Manor. "I'm afraid you've mistaken me for someone else." Although he was no longer afraid of Yan Chaozong and his gang, he still did not want others to know about what he had done in Beijing, especially Yan Chaozong and his gang. Qin Sheng's tone was cold. Once he sorted out his life and understood the detailed background of the Qin and Zhu families, he would settle the score with Yan Chaozong. The man was dressed very brightly. Inside, he was wearing a custom-made British-style suit from Seville Row, and on the outside, he was wearing a grey coat and a Hermes scarf. He looked like an elite member of the upper class. I don't think so, right? It's impossible for them to look the same. Even their names are the same, right? Besides, I heard about Qin Sheng some time ago. It seems that Qin Sheng has already disappeared from Hangzhou. Everything can't be so coincidental, right? The man said confidently. No matter how Qin Sheng refuted, he would not doubt his own judgment. In this case, Qin Sheng did not intend to deny it. He directly admitted, "You guessed right. I am that Qin Sheng. Is there any problem?" Qin Sheng suddenly admitted it so directly, which made the man unable to use the words that he had prepared. He did not know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "Brother, you are not playing by the rules. Aren't you afraid that I will tip them off?" Qin Sheng said disapprovingly, "If you want to, I won't stop you. After all, this is your freedom. Anyway, I have to go back to Hangzhou to look for them sooner or later. What you owe will eventually be paid back." The man shook his head and said, "I'm just kidding. It doesn't benefit me at all. I don't have anything to do with them, and the path I take is different. But I am very curious. You should have left Hangzhou not long ago. How did you appear here? Not just anyone could enter this advanced course. Every student here had a family backing them, a powerful background, or a net worth of at least a few billion. How could you enter? If you were really qualified to enter, you wouldn't have been suppressed by Yan Chaozong and Chu Huanxi in Hangzhou. Moreover, as far as I know, there are only 30 places in this advanced course, but you're the 31st. Qin Sheng sneered and said, "Do I need to explain this to you? Qin Sheng, you don't have to be hostile to me. I don't have any bad intentions towards you. After all, we don't have any conflicts of interest or old hatred. I'm just curious to meet someone I know here, and it's you who's full of mystery. No matter what, we're classmates now, right?" The man didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he could understand that anyone would be wary of him. Qin Sheng squinted his eyes and looked at the man in front of him again and again. He was dubious about the man's words. If he really told Yan Chaozong this news, he would have to be prepared to face Yan Chaozong again. "Maybe you didn't notice me in the classroom just now. In that case, let me introduce myself again. My name is Wei Li. I don't think you need me to tell you my background," Wei Li said with a smile. After all, the only person in Hangzhou with the surname Wei was his father, who was a powerful representative of the Zhujiang Chamber of Commerce. Qin Sheng was not interested in Wei Li. He was really not afraid of Wei Li revealing the news. At this time, Feng Huawei also came out. Qin Sheng said to Wei Li in a low voice, "I still have something to do. I'll leave first. See you later." Qin Sheng walked quickly to Feng Huawei. Feng Huawei was also looking at Wei Li. He just smiled and lowered his head slightly. Then he left with Qin Sheng. Wei Li stood there thoughtfully. This man was really a mystery. He was embarrassed in Hangzhou and could sneak into the advanced course of Tsinghua University. What was his background? Wei Li would never let go of people he was interested in. He was just curious. He really had no other thoughts about Qin Sheng. At noon, Qin Sheng and Feng Huawei did not go far. They had lunch in a cafeteria of Tsinghua University. Feng Huawei heard that it was Qin Sheng's first time in Tsinghua University, so he took Qin Sheng to wander around Tsinghua University. They did not go for lunch until half an hour later. A few simple ordinary dishes, 2 bowls of rice, and 2 bottles of Coke. Qin Sheng told Feng Huawei about his request for help. After hearing it, Feng Huawei agreed directly and did not refuse at all, because it was indeed a very easy thing for him. After all, it was worth it for Qin Sheng to owe him a favor for such a simple thing. After lunch, Feng Huawei insisted on paying the bill. Qin Sheng could not persuade him. In the end, he could only let Feng Huawei pay the bill. He would find a chance to make it up to him in the future. After they separated, Feng Huawei went back to his office in the School of Economics and Management. Qin Sheng had nothing to do, so he wandered around the campus and felt the atmosphere of Tsinghua University. These God's favored ones were the future backbones of the Republic. No one knew which one of them would shine brightly in the future. After wandering around the campus for a while, Qin Sheng went to a few famous places. He went to the library again. When he came out of the library, he did not expect to meet his neighbor, Han Su. Han Su was not reserved. What he said was true. This guy had probably just arrived at Tsinghua University in the past 2 days. He did not expect that he would be strolling around the campus with a pretty and pure beauty in his arms so soon. He was really attracting hatred. Other people's family affairs had nothing to do with Qin Sheng. Qin Sheng was planning to avoid this guy and find a shortcut. Who knew that he would be discovered by him and ran over. "Hey, Qin Sheng, what are you doing in such a hurry?" Han Su pulled the beauty and said happily. Qin Sheng was speechless. He could not hide any more. Now he could only bite the bullet and said, "It's almost 2 o'clock. It's time for class. Get ready to go to the classroom." Oh, it's almost 2 o'clock. So fast, Han Su muttered to himself. Qin Sheng said casually, "Romance is the most important thing." Han Su smiled mischievously. Then he pulled the beauty next to him and introduced, "This is my girlfriend, Zhang Mi, a graduate student in law school. Isn't she beautiful?" "Yes, she is." Qin Sheng was bored. He really wanted to tell the beautiful girl that she could not control this super-rich second generation. It was better to be sensible. However, out of politeness and respect, Qin Sheng still greeted, "Hello." Han Su directly put his arm around Qin Sheng's shoulder as if he had known him for many years. He introduced, "This is my good friend and also my classmate, Qin Sheng. Isn't he very handsome? Mimi, are there any single beauties in your school? Introduce one to my buddy, and I guarantee that he will not worry about wealth in his life." After the beauty named Zhang Mi heard that Qin Sheng and Han Su were classmates, her eyes instantly lit up. She had heard from Han Su that the professors and guests of the advanced course of the School of Economics and Management were all well known. Moreover, this class only recruited 31 students, and all of them were actively invited. It could be seen that these students' backgrounds were not simple. Moreover, she and Han Su knew each other. They were both from Tianjin. She knew better than anyone else the status of Han Su's family in Tianjin. In this case, there was no need to guess Qin Sheng's background. Zhang Mi quickly promised, "Okay. There are many beauties in our law school. Qin Sheng did not give Han Su any face at all. He said, "I have a girlfriend and she is very beautiful. I don't need to bother you. If there is nothing else, I will leave first." After saying that, Qin Sheng turned around and left. Han Su called him several times, but Qin Sheng did not respond. Han Su had no choice but to whisper a few words to Zhang Mi. Then he let Zhang Mi go back and quickly caught up with Qin Sheng. Han Su asked casually, "Bro, what's wrong? You seem to be in a bad mood." Qin Sheng squinted and said, "God is watching what people do. If you owe others, there will be people who will make you pay back. You are not from the same world at all. Since you can't give her happiness, why bother to disturb her life?" After Han Su heard that, he said disapprovingly, "Zhou Yu and Huang Gai, one is willing to fight, and the other is willing to suffer. We are just taking what we need. There is no need to feel that we owe each other. She knows that I have a girlfriend, and I also know her purpose. It is nothing more than to use me as a springboard to get the most benefit. In this day and age, who really cares about others?" Qin Sheng shook his head and smiled bitterly without saying anything. People with different principles could not make plans together. Everyone had their own principles and bottom lines. Qin Sheng was not an old pedant. Why did he have to preach the big principles to everyone? Qin Sheng said, "People live freely and freely. Everyone knows the big principles, but who can do it? I am a little bored studying in Tsinghua University. I am not like you who really come here to learn things. I am here to suffer. So I find a temporary girlfriend to kill time. Anyway, what I give her will definitely exceed what she gives. I will definitely not owe her this little favor. You can rest assured that I am not as bastard as you think." Seeing that Qin Sheng did not speak, Han Su continued to nag. He was thick-skinned. Others did not intend to pay attention to him, but he was like a dog-skin plaster. Qin Sheng shrugged and said, "As long as you are happy. Let's not talk about this. Let's go to class. I called my father today and said that there are many beautiful women in our class. My father is even more bastard than me. He asked me to find one and marry her. You can't blame me for being like this. Our family's genes are like this. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked," Han Su said with a wronged look. Qin Sheng was really helpless this time. He was really a weirdo. In the afternoon class, Qin Sheng listened with great interest and made a lot of note. After all, this professor who mainly taught economics was very famous among domestic economists. It was said that he was the government's think tank. Han Su next to him was also very happy playing games. They did not disturb each other. However, Wei Li observed Qin Sheng several times intentionally or unintentionally, but Qin Sheng did not care. After class, Qin Sheng packed up his things and left quickly. He still wanted to go to the bookstore to buy some things. As expected, he was stopped by Han Su after a few steps. He wanted to invite him to dinner and go to the bar. Qin Sheng did not have time to care about him, so he casually found an excuse to refuse. In the next few days, Qin Sheng's life was very calm. Fang Huawei gave him what he wanted the next day. So when Qin Sheng had classes, he went to classes. When he had no classes, he went to other departments to attend classes or stayed in the library. Chapter 368. Can't let it go. It's snowing in Xi'an, but I caught a cold. It's not a good thing. I love snow the most and hate colds the most. I'll go to Hangzhou tomorrow and start writing in seclusion the day after tomorrow. It's the first month of the new year. I hope you can work hard. After Qin Sheng got in the car, Qin Ran told him that she would take him back to the Sihiyuan for dinner. On this day every month, Qin Ran would go back to the Sihiyuan to have dinner with Qin Chang'an, which was an unwritten rule. No matter how resentful she was, she still had to be filial to him. So now that Qin Sheng was back, Qin Ran would take him to follow this habit. She also hoped that the father and son could communicate more. Otherwise, the stalemate would never be broken. During this period of time, Qin Shing's mentality gradually calmed down, and he could also understand some things. He began to consider things from Qin Chang'an's point of view. He was Qin Chang'an's biological son, and Qin Chang'an definitely had no evil intentions towards him. He had sent people to hide in the dark to protect him. If not for Qin Chang'an's protection, he might have died on Mount Jihua. How could he be free and unfettered now? Moreover, Qin Chang'an was not in a hurry to reconcile with him. Of course, he had his reasons. Qin Shing also thought about this, but he did not think it through. In the end, no one was perfect. Qin Chang'an was not a god, neither was Zhuang Zhou. It was impossible for them to control everything. Of course, they did not want Gu Qingyang to die. However, in the end, what had happened had still happened. Everything was not malicious, but a freak accident. They could only blame Yan Chaozong and his gang. Therefore, Qin Shing was not so resentful towards Qin Chang'an. After all, he was a philosophy student. After he calmed down, he could think about it from all aspects and finally convince himself. Therefore, when Qin Ran told Qin Shing that she would go back to the Sihiyuan for dinner, he was not surprised at all. He just said, "Oh," calmly. This surprised Qin Ran. She was afraid that Qin Shing would refuse, and was thinking about how to persuade him. She did not expect that Qin Shing did not resist at all and directly agreed. Sometimes, she really did not understand her brother. Qin Ran did not inform the Sihiyuan. Qin Shing also came back tonight. On the way, they met a fruit shop and bought some fruits and snacks, which was more or less a token of appreciation. When Qin Ran's car drove into the Sihiyuan and Gongsun came out to pick her up, he saw that Qin Shing was still in a daze. After a long time, he said excitedly, "Young master is also back. Come in, it's cold outside." Gongsun said as he took the things from Qin Ran and Qin Shing. He said to the bodyguard behind him, and said, "Young master is back." The bodyguard hurriedly ran to the middle court to inform Qin Chang'an. They had already known who the young man who had visited the Sihiyuan last time was 2 days ago. "I Qin. I'm not Qin test come. Qin. I am it. To say the family. Chun Day. She is to." Gongsun led Qin Ran, Qin Shing, and Qin Sheng to the middle courtyard. Every time this day came, Qin Chang'an would put off all his work and go back to the Sihiyuan in advance to prepare dinner by himself. Today was the same. He had already prepared dinner and was just waiting for Qin Ran to come back. Gongsun took Qin Ran and Qin Sheng to the Sihiyuan. Qin Chang'an had a complicated expression. He was surprised, relieved, and emotional. Today was the same. He was waiting for Qin Ran. When the bodyguard came in and told him that Qin Ran had brought Qin Shing back, the expression on Qin Chang'an's face was somewhat complicated. There was surprise, gratification, and emotion. In the end, he let out a long sigh. After all, father and son were father and son. There were no obstacles that could not be overcome. Qin Shing could face Qin Chang'an. But he didn't know how to greet him. He was surprised, relieved, and emotional. Finally, he sighed. They were father and son. Qin Shing could face Qin Chang'an directly, but he did not know how to greet him. Although he knew that the man in front of him was his father, he did not know why he could not call him father. Qin Shing knew that Qin Shing didn't accept him. But he was not in a hurry. He smiled and said, "You're back." This man, who was cold and ruthless in front of most people, was embarrassed at this moment. Others might find it strange. Qin Shing tried his best to squeeze out a smile and nodded. Although he was forcing himself to smile, it was much better than pulling a long face, as if someone owed him millions of dollars. Qin Ran tried to ease the atmosphere. "Dad, Uncle Gongsun said you made garlic broccoli for me again. It didn't taste good last time." As she spoke, Qin Ran held Qin Chang'an's arm. Since Qin Shing had come back, of course, Qin Ran would not treat her father the way she used to. It was understandable that she was angry before. But now she just hoped that this family could be like a family. Qin Xing and her father were so close. If she was still stubborn, her father would be disappointed. I guarantee that it will be delicious this time. They have all tasted it. Qin Chang'an chuckled. It was said that a daughter was a father's intimate little cotton-padded jacket. However, Qin Chang'an had never felt the warmth of this cotton-padded jacket. However, this did not affect his love for his daughter. Qin Ran smiled and said, "Okay, I'm going to taste it." "Don't stand here. You must be hungry. Let's have dinner first." Gong Sun asked the kitchen to serve the dishes. Qin Chang'an took Qin Ran and Qin Xing to the dining room and said to Gong Sun. When they arrived at the dining room, Qin Ran and Qin Xing sat on both sides of Qin Chang'an, which made Qin Chang'an happy. Qin Ran said, "Dad, it's cold today. How about letting Qin Xing drink with you to warm up?" Qin Chang'an didn't answer. He didn't care, but he was afraid that Qin Xing wouldn't agree. Before they met, he knew Qin Xing's character and temper. But after Qin Xing came back, their relationship was no longer the same as before. He couldn't guess. "Qin Xing, what do you think?" Qin Ran stared at Qin Xing with a smile. There was a pleading look in her eyes. Since his sister was like this, how could Qin Xing have the heart to refuse? Besides, he wouldn't do that. After all, he had figured out a lot of things these days. "You can drink a little. I have classes tomorrow morning," Qin Xing said casually. It meant that he had agreed to Qin Ran. Qin Ran was very happy. She turned to Qin Chang'an and said, "Dad, which bottle should we open? I remember you still have a 50-year-old Maodai. Are you willing to drink it today?" It was the first time in Qin Chang'an's life that he drank with his son. It was a memorable event. Even if it was a 100-year-old Maodai, Qin Chang'an would be willing to drink it today, let alone a 50-year-old Maodai. "You can choose whatever you want from the liquor cabinet," Qin Chang'an said casually. After receiving the order, Qin Ran immediately stood up and walked to the suite in the dining room. There were two especially large wine cabinets in the suite, which were filled with all kinds of liquor of different ages. Most of them were collected by Qin Chang'an over the years. A small part of them were given or bought by others. In the dining room, after Qin Ran left, the atmosphere instantly dropped to the freezing point. Only the servants were serving dishes back and forth. Gong Sun, who was in the kitchen, had not come over yet. Qin Chang'an didn't want to be too embarrassed, so he looked at Qin Xing and asked casually, "How are you doing in Tsinghua these days?" Qin Xing just raised his head slightly and replied casually, "Not bad. It's quite fulfilling and I learned a lot. After all, Tsinghua is the top university in the country. Theory should be combined with practice. What you lack is practical experience, unlike your classmates," Qin Chang'an said in a low voice. This class was highly qualified, but there was no specific educational background. It was meaningless for Qin Xing, so Qin Chang'an didn't arrange it like that. Qin Xing knew what Qin Chang'an wanted to say, so he said casually, "I prefer to listen to history and philosophy, but it seems that Peking University is better." Qin Xing blocked the topic that Qin Chang'an wanted to continue. Qin Chang'an didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This son was not so easy to fool. How to let him enter the company? This was indeed a difficult problem. At this time, Gong Sun came in and asked confusedly, "Where's Ran Ran?" "She went to get the liquor." "Qin Xing, drink with me," Qin Chang'an said calmly. Hearing this, Gong Sun smiled happily. The father and son could drink, which meant that there was progress in their relationship. Gong Sun said happily, "I'll go get the liquor." Qin Ran took a bottle of Maotai, which seemed to be a National Day reception liquor. Anyway, there were all kinds of liquor in the liquor cabinet. At this time, Gong Sun also took out the liquor glass. "Uncle Gong Sun, you drink too," Qin Ran said with a smile. Gong Sun shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I won't drink. I've quit for many years." Gongsun could hold his liquor very well. It could be said that 2 or 3 Qin Shing could not beat him. But after the incident that year, Gongsun decided to quit drinking. It had been more than 20 years since then, and he had not touched a single drop of alcohol. For a person who loved alcohol as much as his life, not everyone had this kind of determination. Qin Ran only drank red wine and never touched white wine. When she was socializing, no one would force her to drink. After all, no one would make things difficult for a beauty. Moreover, Qin Chang'an was behind Qin Ran. Who dared to offend him? Qin Ran poured liquor for her father and brother. Recently, she liked to be a waitress. Seeing that Qin Shing had reintegrated into this big family, she was happier than anyone else. Qin Chang'an picked up the liquor glass and hesitated for a while. Originally, I wanted to call you later. But since you are back today, I will say it in person. Qin Ran frowned and said, Dad, what's the matter? Qin Chang'an said with some self-mockery, Nothing big. The day after tomorrow is your mother's birthday. In the past, I was the one who went to see her. This year, Qin Shing is back. Coincidentally, he has not gone to see his mother yet. Then you and your brother can go together the day after tomorrow. Qin Ran suddenly thought of it. She could not help but feel a little regretful. How could she forget such an important day? Maybe she was too happy that Qin Shing had come back recently, so she forgot about it. Consequently, Qin Ran said, Dad, if you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it. However, except for the day of her mother's death, Qin Ran would not go there at other times. Every time she thought of her mother, she would go to the old house. She felt that she was closer to her mother there. I will ask Gongsun to prepare the things. At that time, you can go there directly, Qin Chang'an said in a low voice. Qin Ran frowned and said, Dad, aren't you going? I won't go this time. We are an old couple. If I don't go this time, your mother won't blame me, Qin Chang'an said with a smile. However, when he said this, a trace of sadness flashed across his eyes. That kind of sadness had a different meaning for a man who was only 60 years old. Qin Chang'an smiled happily. It was said that time could make people forget everything. No matter how hard-working people and things were, they would become dispensable. However, after more than 20 years, why did Qin Chang'an still not let go? Chapter 369. It's too hard to be alone. Some love, perhaps because it was too perfect, God would be so cruel to break them apart. If the accident had not happened more than 20 years ago, the love between Qin Shing's parents would have been envied by many. When they first met, they were only 16 years old. A heavy snow had just passed, and the snow in the yard was up to their ankles. Several boys were making a snowman there, and a girl in a cotton-padded jacket with a red face stood not far away and watched them quietly, humming a song that no one had heard before. Qin Chang'an was led into the yard by his father, and was instantly attracted by the girl. Later, when he recalled that day, he finally knew what it meant to be 10,000 years at a glance, and what it meant to continue the love of the previous life in this life. His father entered the house, but Qin Chang'an stood outside and did not move. He kept staring at the girl, because the girl was so beautiful, especially her clear eyes, which were full of vitality. The girl finally came to her senses and lowered her head in embarrassment. Qin Chang'an walked over slowly and said directly, My name is Qin Chang'an, what's yours? Zhu Qinghuan, the girl said with a smile, as if she was not afraid of the strange boy in front of her. The 16-year-old Qin Chang'an muttered subconsciously, Qinghuan is the most interesting thing in the world? Do you like Su Shi too? The girl said in surprise. Her name was taken from Su Shi's poem, Huan Shi Sha, Fine Rain and Slanting Wind in the Morning Frost. However, not everyone knew this poem in that era where there were many illiterate. Qin Chang'an shook his head and said, I've read some, but I likely buy more. 10 Steps to Kill a Person, 1,000 Miles Unstoppable. The girl did not argue with the boy about the literary talent of Su Shi and Li Bai. She just lowered her head and pouted, playing with her red scarf. Qin Chang'an felt very strange about the girl in front of him. He was excited and nervous, and even he did not know why. He almost blurted out subconsciously, "Zhu Qinghuan, wait a few years, I will marry you." Hearing this, the girl was stunned. Then she looked up and stared at the boy in front of her, who she had just known for a few minutes, in surprise. He was not fat, thin, or handsome, but he was tall and looked a little mature. The girl did not know why he said such a thing, but it was always a happy thing to be liked, so she covered her mouth and laughed. At that moment, Qin Chang'an felt that this winter was not as cold as he had imagined. It was as if spring had arrived in an instant. The flowers were blooming and the sun was shining brightly. In the following years, Qin Chang'an never saw the girl again. He had been living a homeless life. Sometimes he was in Siju City and sometimes he was in other places. After all, it was a turbulent era. Many big shots could not control their own fates, let alone young children like them. In the face of the times, no one was spared. It was not until he was 24 years old that he finally returned to Siju City and no longer had to wander around. At a random gathering, he saw the girl again. He immediately recognized the girl whom he had been thinking about for the past few years. He walked up to the girl again and asked directly, "Zhu Qinghuan, do you still remember me?" Although 8 years had passed between the ages of 16 and 24, his appearance would not change much. Therefore, Zhu Qinghuan still remembered Qin Chang'an. After all, not many boys had told her directly that they wanted to marry her, and not many boys had accurately told her the origin of her name. Qin Chang'an, Zhu Qinghuan, who was wearing a red dress, said with a smile. She was surrounded by many friends, who were looking at the ordinary-looking Qin Chang'an. Qin Chang'an said again in a shocking tone, "I'm back to marry you." His words were like thunder on the flat ground. The surrounding crowd was in an uproar. It should be known that Zhu Qinghuan was very popular at this time. She was the dream lover of many men. There were also many boys who chased after her, including some with excellent family backgrounds. Zhu Qinghuan did not know whether to laugh or cry. 8 years had passed, and this man was still the same as before. He had not changed at all. "Then you should at least get me first." Zhu Qinghuan did not refuse. She also had a deep impression of Qin Chang'an. Qin Chang'an nodded firmly and said, "Okay. There are many people chasing after me. Are you confident?" Zhu Qinghuan joked with a smile. Qin Chang'an did not answer. He turned around and left. He did not dare to say that he was confident, but he would try his best. Even if he could not get Zhu Qinghuan in the end, he would not leave himself with regret. That year, Qin Chang'an tried his best to do what a man could do for a woman. The ending was self-evident. Zhu Qinghuan agreed to marry Qin Chang'an, but Qin Chang'an also paid a lot for it. He had offended many rivals in love, which was also a hidden danger in the future. They got to know each other and fell in love with each other. They got married and had children. Their married life was very happy. Qin Chang'an worked hard for his career, while Zhu Qinghuan took care of her husband and children. They helped each other in difficult times. Their relationship was like glue, which made everyone envious. However, that year, everything came to an abrupt end. His wife's sudden death was a devastating blow to Qin Chang'an. At that time, he did not care about his father taking Qin Xing away, because he had completely given up on himself and could not recover from the great sorrow. At that time, he even wanted to die because he had promised to spend the rest of his life with her. Now that he was alone, he did not know how to continue living. However, thinking of his daughter, he did not commit suicide in the end, because he was afraid that his wife would blame him. No one knew how Qin Chang'an survived those years. No one knew how he vented his sorrow bit by bit. However, when everyone came back to their senses, Qin Chang'an had completely changed and moved forward with a heavy burden. All these years, whether it was his wife's death anniversary, birthday, or wedding anniversary, as long as it was an important festival, Qin Chang'an would visit his wife. He would definitely bring a bouquet of flowers, because he knew that his wife liked flowers. When he was alone, he would chat with her, talk about his troubles or talk about his daughter and so on. Sometimes, he would drink half a bottle of white wine alone, as if that was the most satisfying way. This year, Qin Shing came back. Qin Chang'an thought that compared to him, his wife would want to see their son more. He knew that his wife would definitely want to see him now that his son was back. However, Qin Shing was not in a good state, so Qin Chang'an did not urge him. It was just that the day after tomorrow was his wife's birthday, so he talked about it today. When Qin Chang'an said this, Qin Ran felt very sad. She knew that her father would visit her mother almost every month. She thought that after so many years, that affection had long faded. It was not until today that she understood that her father's affection for her mother was too deep. It was so deep that it could not be erased even a little bit of memory. "Dad, I'm sorry," Qin Ran said emotionally. Qin Chang'an said with a smile, "How can a daughter say sorry to her father? Dad will not blame you no matter what you do, as long as you are happy." Qin Shing also felt bad. He hesitated for a moment, then raised his glass and said, "Let me drink with you." Qin Chang'an was already satisfied with Qin Shing's words. He picked up the wine glass and drank it in one gulp. This was the most comfortable wine he had ever drunk in all these years. He almost felt drunk. Qin Chang'an's eyes lit up. A family, a table of dishes, a bottle of wine. Although the atmosphere was not that harmonious, Qin Chang'an was still very happy, because all the efforts he had made over these years did not matter at this moment. For him, his life dreams and goals had been realized long ago. He stood at the top of his level. Now he only wanted his children to be happy and enjoy his old age. After dinner, Qin Chang'an went to the study. Qin Ran and Qin Shing sat in the side hall and watched TV. The table was full of fruits and snacks. Qin Ran said absent-mindedly, "He has had a hard time these years." "Didn't he find another one?" Qin Shing asked, squinting. Qin Ran shook her head and said, "No, I know he has other women, but no one has ever walked into this house. As for his women, I can understand. After all, it's too hard to be alone. But his heart can only hold our mother, no one else can live in it." Hearing these words, Qin Shing felt anxious and said casually, "Sister, let's go for a drink." Qin Ran stared at Qin Shing in surprise. It seemed that she could understand why Qin Shing said this. She said in a low voice, "Okay, let me make a call first." After a while, Qin Ran finished the call and said to Qin Shing, "Let's go. I'll take you to a place." Qin Shing did not care about where they were going. As long as he had alcohol to drink, it would be fine. He had not had a good drink for a long time. Qin Ran took Qin Shing out. Before she left, she told Uncle Gongsun that she would take Qin Shing out to play and would not come back tonight. Of course, Gongsun did not stop her. For Qin Ran, since Qin Shing had come back, as her brother, she would, of course, bring Qin Shing into her circle slowly. This was definitely a good thing for Qin Shing. In the future, even if something happened, she could take care of Qin Shing. However, Qin Ran did not tell them who she would bring today. This was a small bar located near the World Trade Center. It never received outsiders. Basically, friends brought their friends here. The owner did not rely on this to make money. It was a place for friends to chat and make fun of each other. This bar was hidden in a private room of a Western restaurant. There was a decorative bookcase in the private room. After opening the decorative bookcase, they would enter a dark path. After passing through the path, they would arrive at the bar. The inside of the bar would suddenly become bright and spacious. Qin Ran often came here. Therefore, she led Qin Shing into the private room with ease. There was a special waiter in the private room. There was also a face recognition system. Naturally, the system could distinguish whether they were acquaintances or not. At this moment, Qin Ran's group of friends were already inside. They were waiting to see who this new friend of hers was. Moreover, it was a man. How could they not look forward to it? When Qin Ran led Qin Sheng into the bar, they instantly attracted the attention of many acquaintances. Most of them knew Qin Ran but were not familiar with her. However, everyone knew that Qin Ran came here alone every time. She had never brought any friends with her. At most, she would be with her few best friends. Why did she bring a man here today? Chapter 370. Too Naive. Zongheng Literature's 2017 annual stocktaking begins. You can vote for the best author and best novel on the Zongheng Novel app or Zongheng Computer mobile website. You can see it when you open the homepage of The Strongest Counterattack. Everyone gets 5 free tickets a day. You can also buy tickets by giving them a tip. One ticket costs 100 Zongheng coins. Please vote for the best novel, The Strongest Counterattack. Don't vote for the best author. Let's gather our strength and let everyone see the strength of The Strongest Counterattack. The name of this bar was also interesting. It was called Big Hidden. Obviously, it had the meaning of a small hidden in the forest, a big hidden in the world. After all, this bar was hidden in the middle of a busy city. The customers in the restaurants outside certainly did not know that there was such a high-class bar hidden behind the restaurants. The space of the bar was not small, and the decoration was also unique. There were 3 billiard tables in the middle, and there were larger sofas by the windows. There were also small tables for 4 people scattered around. On the north wall was a bar counter. The entire wall of wine cabinets was filled with all kinds of alcohol. As long as you could name it, it would have it all. At the bar counter, there were 2 bartenders, one male and one female. They were both good-looking. After all, those who could come here were not ordinary people, and the boss did not lack this bit of money. There was a corridor on the right that led deeper into the bar. There was a cigar room, a red wine room, and 3 small private rooms. However, all of these had to be booked in advance. There had to be at least 6 people. It was first come, first served, regardless of status. At this moment, Qin Ran and Qin Sheng had become the focus of all the people in the bar. Qin Ran and Qin Sheng did not care about these playful gazes. Qin Ran just continued to walk forward with Qin Sheng. A few of her childhood friends were playing billiards there. These childhood friends were none other than the ones who had accompanied Qin Ran to Shanghai to cause trouble. Other than Fandaji, who did not come, Zhang De and Ma Weiyang were both there. The other 2 were also good friends in the same circle. Seeing Qin Ran leading Qin Sheng in, they, who had already received the news, were not surprised at all. They just put down the cue sticks in their hands and walked slowly toward Qin Ran and Qin Sheng. Ma Weiyang, who was wearing a tight gray sweater that was embroidered with a perfect figure, said, "The sun rises from the west. Our first Miss Qin is going to announce a big news. After so many years, you finally have good news. My best friend can finally be laid off." Zhang De picked up the wine glass beside him, squinted his eyes and said, Ran, the underground work is very secretive. We didn't even notice any loopholes. Amazing." A younger man chuckled and said, "Sister Ran, quickly introduce our brother-in-law to us. I'm lucky today." The young man, who was standing at the back and dressed in sportswear, did not say anything. He just looked at Qin Sheng and felt that it was not what everyone thought. This was not Sister Ran's temperament. "You guys really didn't see anything?" Qin Ran didn't know whether to laugh or cry. These people were too unreliable. Qin Sheng did not explain and just let them misunderstand. Anyway, this was his biological sister, and there was nothing to avoid. Ma Weiyang whispered, "What the hell? What else do you want to see? Do you want us to say that you're a perfect match? Ran, how did you become like this?" Zhang De frowned slightly and said, Ran, don't keep us in suspense. Introduce him to us." The others also stopped talking and waited for Qin Ran to give the final answer. Qin Ran took a deep breath and pulled Qin Sheng forward. She said, "Since you guys are so stupid, I can only reveal the answer to you. Let me formally introduce you. This handsome and talented little fresh meat is called Qin Sheng. He's my younger brother, my biological brother. You guys know about my biological brother." Her words were like 5 thunderbolts. Everyone was dumbfounded in an instant. Zhang De and Ma Weiyang were dumbfounded because they knew that such a person existed. This was the deepest wound in Qin Ran's heart. Back then, her mother passed away and her brother went missing. It was a huge blow to her. She was quiet for a long time. This group of people had tried many ways to help her gradually recover. All these years, no one had dared to mention this matter. It was just that after so many years, Qin Ran could not forget what had happened in the past. Especially this brother of hers. He was the one she was most worried about. Everyone knew why Qin Ran did not date or marry. It was because she had once said that if she could not find her brother, she would spend the rest of her life alone. A few days before Fandaji got married, he drank too much and completely let go of his obsession with Qin Ran. However, he also hoped that Qin Ran could let go of the past and pursue her own happiness. Although he could not give Qin Ran happiness, he hoped to see her happy. However, Qin Ran's answer was still very firm. She would not get married if she could not find her brother. Fandaji was so angry that he almost cursed. Qin Ran left on the spot. Zhang De and the others almost got into a fight with Fandaji. If they had not stopped them, Fandaji's wedding would probably have been postponed. However, it had been more than 20 years since that incident. Everyone had long lost hope. After all, the Qin family was not an ordinary family. After so many years without finding her brother, the hope must be getting slimmer and slimmer. Hence, everyone sympathized with Qin Ran. Hence, at this moment, Zhang De and Ma Weiyang could not believe that this man in front of them was Qin Ran's missing biological brother. This was too unimaginable. It was as if a miracle had suddenly happened. They stared at Qin Sheng. The more they looked at him, the more they felt that the two of them were really similar. Moreover, they all knew Qin Sheng when he was young. Some of their memories were finally clear. Hence, their gazes and expressions changed from the initial confusion to shock, followed by doubt and confusion, and finally, surprise and excitement. As for the other two, they were confused because they had never heard that Sister Ran had a biological brother. They all knew that Sister Ran was Master Qin's only daughter. Ran, is he really your brother?" Although Ma Weiyang had already recognized him, she still asked in disbelief. This was definitely big news. It was enough to blow up their small circle. Qin Ran smiled and said confidently, "I guarantee it." When Ma Weiyang heard this, she directly pounced on Qin Sheng. Before Qin Sheng could come back to his senses, she had already hugged him and even kissed his face hard twice. She was just short of a kiss that would last for a century. People who did not know better would think that this was her biological brother who had been separated from her for many years. "Oh, my little Shengzi, your sister Ponytail missed you so much. You're such a heartless guy, you're finally willing to come back." Ma Weiyang shouted excitedly. There was no doubt about her relationship with Qin Ran. They had been through a lot in the past few years and knew each other better than their parents. She remembered that whenever Qin Ran was sad when they were young, she would cry with Qin Ran. It was the same when they grew up. Hence, Ma Weiyang also had true feelings for Qin Sheng. Hence, she was so emotional that she had already hugged him and started crying. She was really happy for Qin Ran. This poor woman was finally not going to be tortured anymore. "Oh my gosh, something big has happened," Zhang De mumbled to himself. He had to quickly make a phone call to inform those bastards. Such a lively scene, of course they could not miss it. He reckoned that even if he called the others, not many would believe him. Qin Sheng was somewhat at a loss because of the agitated Ma Wei-yang. This sister was hanging on him like a koala bear. It should be known that this sister's figure was very hot, and her soft breasts were even intimately touching his chest. It was this sniffling that made him somewhat uncomfortable. Ma Wei-yang was a little emotional. Qin Ran felt that there were too many people here. It was not suitable to stay for long. Before everyone understood what was going on, he said to Zhang De and the rest, "Let's go to the private room to talk. It's not suitable here." Only then did Zhang De understand. He immediately ran to the bar counter and instructed the waiter. Luckily, there were not many guests tonight. The private rooms were all empty. Only then did everyone move to the private room. Along the way, Ma Wei-yang held on to Qin Sheng's arm like an intimate couple and was reluctant to let go. Qin Sheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. After Qin Ran and the rest walked into the private room, the people in the hall then withdrew their gazes. It was noisy just now and they did not hear clearly what was going on. However, everyone could tell that the young man that Qin Ran had brought along was not simple. Otherwise, why would that group of people be so emotional? If Qin Sheng had paid attention, he would definitely have found a familiar person sitting at the table by the window. This familiar person was his classmate, Wei Li from Hangzhou. It was a pity that he did not have time to care about others. After Wei Li saw Qin Sheng, he did not stand up to greet him. He only observed Qin Sheng secretly. He did not expect to meet Qin Sheng here. This was a stronghold of the rich and powerful. The boss behind it was also not an ordinary person. If it were Han Su, after seeing Qin Sheng, he would definitely run over to greet him immediately. He did not care about those things. Wei Li was glad that he did not greet Qin Sheng, because from what happened today, it seemed that he was gradually unveiling Qin Sheng's mysterious veil. "Brother Zhao, who were those people just now?" Wei Li looked at his friend next to him and asked. The man called Brother Zhao also noticed that Wei Li had been staring at them. He was puzzled and asked, "Do you know them?" "I know the man who came in later. He is a classmate of the Tsinghua University advanced course that I recently joined." "I don't know the others," Wei Li said truthfully. Brother Zhao said thoughtfully, "Those people just now are regular customers here. Their relationship with Boss Li is not simple. Moreover, their backgrounds are also very deep. If you can build a relationship with them, it will be of great help to you in the future." Wei Li said in surprise, "How deep? Is their background even deeper than yours and third sister's?" Brother Zhao looked at the woman next to him, laughed and shook his head. "They are not at the same level at all." After hearing this, Wei Li was instantly excited. He subconsciously found a direction to build a relationship with them. He stood up with a smile and said, "Then should I go over and say hello?" Brother Zhao and third sister did not say anything and let Wei Li do what he wanted. If Wei Li could build a relationship with them, it would also be good for them. They were afraid that this guy would be rejected. However, it was not a bad thing to let him be at a disadvantage. Siju City was not Hangzhou City. There were some circles that you could not squeeze into even if you broke your head. The threshold was too high. Wei Li, who had just arrived, thought that this was Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai, where he would be able to fit in as long as he knew each other. Chapter 371. What a slap in the face. The second update is here. I hope everyone will continue to vote for The Strongest Counterattack in Vertical and Horizontal's 2017 final inventory. Different cultures had different attitudes in different places. For example, in the Northeast, most people felt that money was everything. They felt that money was omnipotent and that nothing could be done without money. Many people became officials to earn money. Even a small divisional-level official dared to earn hundreds of millions. Therefore, the atmosphere of bribery in the Northeast was very serious. Shandong, which was close to the Northeast, was the exact opposite. For thousands of years, it was the hometown of Confucius and Mencius. Even if many people wanted to earn money, their ultimate goal was to become an official. For example, that fake minister, who bought his way from a businessman to become a deputy minister. Needless to say, how many political and military bigwigs had come from Shandong over the years. There was a joke that the greatest reward an elder in Shandong could give to a junior was that the child could become a high-ranking official when he grew up. Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai had different cultures from Siju City. Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai focused on everyone who had money to earn. If there was a road to walk, everyone would walk together. Relationships were mutually beneficial, and everyone took what they needed. In the end, the benefits were maximized. However, in the circle of the rich and powerful in Siju City, it was about background and strength. The threshold was very high and the barriers were very strict. This was because everyone had a powerful force behind them. They didn't represent themselves, but the families behind them and so on. Their identities were different from ordinary people. Most of them were very wary, because they knew that many people got close to them only for the force behind them. Hence, those who could play in the same circle were either close since childhood, enough to trust each other, or the relationship between their parents, which was double protection. Hence, we can also see that there were many messy circles in Siju City. Many people were happy to mingle in them, but how many of them could really get into the circle of the rich and powerful? Hence, although Brother Zhao and third sister came here often, they did not easily make friends with others, because they would be hated by others. If one's strength was not at that level, everything would be in vain. The private room in the bar was simply decorated. The original intention was just for people to chat, or play werewolf or other board games. It was a private space that would not disturb other customers. After they went in, Ma Weiyang still did not let go of Qin Sheng. Qin Ran did not know whether to laugh or cry. She said, "Ma Wei, this is my brother, not yours. Can you be more reserved? If you like my brother, it's not too late to divorce him." Ponytail said carelessly, "Your brother is my brother. How can I not know how you've been living all these years? Besides, I haven't seen little Xingzi for more than 20 years. Of course I have to take a good look at him. If you are willing, little Xingzi is also willing. I don't mind being his lover." "How shameless you are!" Qin Ran scolded with a smile. Qin Sheng had a helpless look on his face. How could this beauty be so direct and not care about his feelings at all? However, when the other two men saw Qin Sheng's embarrassed look and the bickering between Sister Ran and Ponytail, they laughed happily. However, their focus was naturally on Sister Ran's younger brother, who had suddenly appeared. Zhang De did not follow them in. He had to inform his buddies, such as Fandaji, etc. However, he did not know what was going on tonight. No one picked up his calls. Perhaps everyone was busy at the end of the year, such as work or social engagement. Nowadays, social engagements did not allow people to take out their phones, so it was understandable. Only Fandaji rushed over. At first, Fandaji did not believe it and said that Zhang De should not joke about such things. Zhang De explained again and again, but he did not believe it. It was only when Zhang De said that if he lied to him, he could do whatever he wanted, that Fandaji rushed over. After the call, Zhang De returned to the private room and scolded. That idiot Fandaji did not believe it. "Why did you call them? I don't want others to know." Qin Ran frowned. She did not expect that Zhang De would tell others. This was unexpected. Zhang De immediately came to his senses and said, Oh, my bad, my bad. I was too happy." Fortunately, only Fandaji came. The others either did not pick up or did not believe me at all. Ma Weiyang did not bother to listen to Zhang Da's explanation. She snorted and said, "Can you not be so impulsive? You haven't even figured out what's going on and you're already saying this and that. No wonder you can't make it to the headquarters and can only be a mountain king in Sun Company." Zhang De muttered, I think being a mountain king is good enough. Ma Weiyang glared at Zhang De. She couldn't be bothered to bicker with him. When they were together, it was always one of them mocking each other, but their relationship had never been distant. Ran, tell us, when did you find little Shengzi? Ma Weiyang asked impatiently. Qin Ran did not know how to explain. After thinking for a while, she said, Actually, we found him last year. The old man did not tell anyone. Even I only found out this year. I have to say that the old man is really good at keeping secret. Uncle Qin is awesome. More than 20 years have passed and we have all given up hope, but he still persisted in looking for little Shengzi. Heaven really does not disappoint those who wait. Your Qin family has a successor. Zhang De was amazed. He did not admire many people, but Uncle Qin was definitely one. If it was not for his family's reluctance, he would have become Uncle Qin's godson long ago. Ma Weiyang also echoed and sighed, Uncle Qin is still Uncle Qin. Qin Ran continued, Do you still remember when you accompanied me to Shanghai some time ago? Do you know why I caused trouble? It was to help my brother vent his anger. But this is not over yet. Sooner or later, I will settle old and new grudges with him. Hearing this, Ma Weiyang immediately stood up and said, Damn, so that's what happened. That bastard actually dared to bully little Shengzi. He must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's guts. Ran, why didn't you say so earlier? If you had, I would have made him suffer. How could I have let him go so easily? Zhang De narrowed his eyes. He finally understood what had happened last time. No wonder Qin Ran was so angry. He laughed coldly and said, Oh, so that's what happened. I got it. Qin Ran was confused, but she could roughly understand what had happened. If she was not mistaken, her sister must have gone to Shanghai to find Yan Chaozong. Sister, I will do this myself, Qin Xing said casually. Qin Ran chuckled and said, I know. I just feel sorry for you. Ma Weiyang said very seriously, Ran, little Shengzi is right. He should take revenge himself. Only then will he feel a sense of accomplishment. Little Shengzi, go ahead and take revenge in any way you want. As long as you don't kill or commit arson, no matter what happens, we will take care of it for you. You are not only Ran's biological brother, but also ours. Don't forget, we used to tease you when you were young. Zhang De also said in a neither light nor heavy tone, Little Shengzi, when are you going to Shanghai? Tell me, we still have many friends there. At this time, the other two young men also said, And us, we are all on the side of family. Qin Xing finally understood why his sister had brought him here. She was looking for resources for him. When he really went to Shanghai, there would be a lot of resources that he could use. Thank you, brothers and sisters, Qin Xing said sincerely. At this time, the door of the box was knocked from outside. Zhang De thought that Fan Deji was nearby, so he opened the door excitedly. After opening the door, he found that it was not Fan Deji, but a stranger. Zhang De was a little unhappy and said, Who are you looking for? Of course, it was Wei Li who came uninvited. He smiled and said, I'm looking for Qin Xing. Hearing that it was Qin Xing, Zhang Da's attitude changed. He opened the door and let the man in. He said to Qin Xing, Little Shengzi, he's looking for you. Although he had only met Qin Xing a few times, he considered himself a friend. Wei Li called out in a friendly manner, Qin Xing, it's really you. I didn't expect to see you here. Qin Xing was such a smart person. When it came to scheming, he was no worse than anyone. It was just that sometimes he did not have enough luck and resources. Moreover, he was not familiar with Wei Li, so he said directly, Do I know you? Wei Li's expression changed instantly and he said awkwardly, Qin Xing, what do you mean? We are classmates. What Qin Xing meant was that Zhang De already knew what was going on and more or less understood. He chuckled and said, Little Shengzi, you don't know him? Qin Xing said indifferently, I don't know him. I'll count to 3. Get out of here, or you'll have to bear the consequences, Zhang De said to Wei Li. The others also glared at Wei Li. They did not like to be disturbed. Besides, there were rules here. It was a naked slap in the face. Wei Li looked embarrassed. He did not know how to deal with this situation. He did not expect Qin Sheng to say this, nor did he want to disturb them. He just came over to say hello and recognize a familiar face. He did not know why Qin Sheng said this, but since Qin Sheng had already said this, there was obviously no turning back. Of course, Wei Li did not want to offend this group of people in front of him. He quickly smiled and said, "I'm sorry, I might have recognized the wrong person. I'm sorry to disturb you. I'll leave now," Wei Li said as he walked out. In the end, he even respectfully closed the door of the box. After closing the door, Wei Li looked disappointed and unhappy. But what could he do even if he was unhappy? He subconsciously thought of taking revenge on Qin Sheng and telling the news that Qin Sheng was in Beijing. But when he thought of Brother Zhao's words just now, he retreated. It was just one failure, and he did not lose anything. He did not believe that he could not knock down this door of Qin Sheng. When Wei Li returned to their position, Brother Zhao saw Wei Li's dejected look, as if he already knew the result. He laughed and said, "Hit a wall?" Wei Li was surprised and said, "Brother Zhao, you already knew the result?" Brother Zhao shook his head and said with a smile, "Wei Li, sometimes you have to put away your cleverness. For this group of people, they will not take you seriously just because you are rich. They are much richer than your family, right? There are many who fall, run, and die. The water in Siju City is deep, you will know slowly." Wei Li was not angry at all. He smiled bitterly and said, "Thank you for your advice, Brother Zhao." In the box, Qin Ran could feel that the atmosphere just now was not right. She asked in a low voice, "Qin Sheng, do you know him?" Qin Sheng did not deny it and said, "Yes, he is a classmate of the advanced course. He is from Hangzhou. He knows what I did in Hangzhou, so I was just testing him." Qin Ran immediately understood. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. You are the same as the old man." Qin Sheng smiled bitterly and did not deny it. Chapter 372. To get very drunk, today's first update, I will continue to ask for votes for the strongest counterattack. The more votes everyone has, the more motivation Old Guan has to write. Everyone continued to chat. Qin Sheng had become the center of attention. Ma Weiyang and Zhang De seemed to have endless questions for him. They were more concerned about him than Qin Ran, which made him feel embarrassed. After all, they hadn't seen him for more than 20 years. They wanted to know where he had been all these years, how he had been, and whether he had suffered or not. The other two men, Yin Hao and Yang Shihua, were basically listening to them. Occasionally, they would say a few words, neither spoiling the fun nor disturbing the atmosphere. They all entered this circle later, more or less related to each other. However, they were young and kept a low profile in this circle. It was extremely difficult for Wei Li to squeeze into this circle. However, Qin Sheng was accepted easily. This was not only because of Qin Ran or Qin Chang'an, but also because of the good karma accumulated by several generations of the Qin family in Siju City. "So you have been in Xi'an for so many years. Grandpa Qin hid so well. Why couldn't we find him?" Hearing that Qin Sheng had been living in Xi'an, Ma Weiyang felt it was unbelievable. She thought Grandpa Qin had hidden Qin Sheng in some deep forest. Otherwise, why couldn't they find him after so many years? Speaking of Grandpa Qin, Zhang De immediately asked, "Little Sheng, you are back. Where is Grandpa Qin?" "My grandpa said he still owes him a pot of good tea." Qin Sheng sighed and said sadly, "Grandpa passed away a few years ago." Hearing this, Zhang De couldn't help but regret bringing this up. Ma Weiyang also stared at Zhang De. Qin Ran also remembered this. During this period, she had only cared about Qin Sheng. Apart from knowing that Grandpa Qin had passed away, She didn't ask about anything else. Maybe it was because she didn't have any feelings for Grandpa. She had only seen him a few times since she was a child, unlike Qin Xing who had lived with Grandpa for so many years. "Where is Grandpa buried?" Qin Ran broke the silence and asked. The others were relieved. Qin Xing answered honestly, "Under Mount Zhongnan." Qin Ran nodded and said, "When you have time, let's go back. No matter what, he is our grandpa." Okay. Qin Xing nodded. The spring festival was coming. Of course, he had to go back to Xi and to report that he was safe. He could not let Auntie Wang and the others worry about him every year. Speaking of this, Qin Xing could not help but think of what had happened to Uncle Lin. Back then, Uncle Lin had been framed and wronged, which led to him going bankrupt and being sent to prison. In the past, he did not have this ability. But now that he had figured out his background, he should be able to think of a way. However, he did not know how to tell Qin Chang'an about it. At that moment, the door to the private room was pushed open again, but this time, there was no knock. Everyone heard a familiar voice shouting, "Zhang De, where is little Xingzi? If you dare to lie to me and make me rush over from the West Third Loop, I'll beat you up today." This was none other than Fandaji, who had been tricked by Zhang De to come over. Fandaji was at home with his wife and child. A call from Zhang De made him rush over in a hurry. He did not even have time to change his clothes. He just casually put on a down jacket and rushed over. The atmosphere was originally a little sad, but Fandaji's timely arrival broke the deadlock. Everyone stared at Fandaji, whose hair was messy, as if they were looking at a monster. "Brother Fan, did you just come back from a famine?" Yinhao asked, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Fandaji said impatiently, "Don't talk nonsense." Then he stared at Zhang De and asked, "Where is little Xingzi?" Zhang De only wanted to scold him for being an idiot. There were only 6 people here, and he knew 5 of them. The last one was, of course, little Xingzi. Moreover, which man could sit between Ran Ran and Ponytail? However, Zhang De understood Fandaji's feelings. He pointed at Qin Xing and chuckled. "Isn't little Xingzi right here?" Fandaji stared at him again and again. He could not believe that the man in front of him was little Xingzi. When he left, he was just a little kid. More than 20 years had passed, and now he was a grown man. He definitely could not be sure. Therefore, Fandaji looked at Qin Ran and asked, "Ran Ran, is he really little Xingzi?" "Yes." Qin Ran nodded slowly. Fandaji might not believe other people's words, but Qin Ran had already nodded to confirm it. He definitely believed that the man in front of him was little Xingzi. He had thought that Zhang De was fooling him, but he did not expect that he would really find little Xingzi. This huge surprise made Fandaji, who was usually very calm, at a loss. He hugged him and patted his back fiercely. "You little brat, you're finally back. It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back." Everyone could understand Fandaji's actions. After all, his feelings for Qin Ran were the most complicated. He naturally hoped that Qin Ran would be happy in this life, but he also knew that if she could not untie this knot in her heart, she would not be happy. Now that she had found little Xingzi, Qin Ran's knot in her heart had also been untied. In the future, there would not be anything holding her back. She could also find her own happiness. Fandaji was happy from the bottom of his heart. After Fandaji calmed down, he was pulled aside by Zhang De. He knew that Fandaji was like them, and definitely had a lot of things to ask. Of course, there were some things that they would take the initiative to tell Fandaji later, such as the last time they went to Shanghai. "It's rare for us to be so happy today, we must drink to our heart's content," Fandaji said generously. He had long forgotten the promise he had made to his wife to abstain from drinking for 3 months. He could do anything but abstain from drinking. He kept making promises and breaking them. Who asked him to be fated with wine in this life? Life must be enjoyed to the fullest. Qin Ran said disapprovingly, My brother said he wanted to drink, so I brought them to you. Otherwise, why do you think I brought him here? Who knew that you guys would drag me to talk so much nonsense?" Ma Wei-yang clicked her tongue and said, "Wow, it seems that our little Xingzi can hold his liquor well. Alright, since little Xingzi wants to drink, we must not go home until we're drunk. If anyone screws up, don't say that you're my friend in the future." Zhang De deliberately said half-jokingly, "I'm just afraid that we can't keep little Xingzi company. Don't forget that he grew up in Xi'an. The Northwest Wolf is not for show." Yin Hao laughed and said, "It's okay. There are so many of us today, I don't believe that we can't keep him company. What do you guys want to drink? I'll go out and get it for you." "Little Xingzi, what kind of wine do you want to drink? Just tell me. As long as you can name it, I promise I'll let you drink it. If there's no wine here, I'll find it for you all over Beijing." Ma Wei-yang liked Qin Sheng for no reason. After all, he was Qin Ran's brother. Qin Sheng was very clear that these friends of his sister were real friends, not a bunch of scoundrels. They might have different identities and different masks outside, but when they were together, they looked very casual and free, without any airs. Therefore, Qin Sheng said straightforwardly, "Beer, white, red, wine, I can drink them all." Hearing his domineering words, Ma Wei-yang liked him even more. She directly shouted, "Haozi, bring the wine." The atmosphere instantly reached its peak. Yin Hao and Yang Shihua laughed and went out to bring the wine. Li Bai said, "When is the moon bright? Ask the blue sky with wine, and only wine can make one forget one's worries." Su Shi once said, "When will the moon be bright? I ask the blue sky with a cup of wine, and only wine can make me forget my worries." There were so many poems about wine in China's thousands of years of traditional culture. Wine was indispensable. People drank when they were happy, and they drank when they were unhappy. Only wine could make a person's mood reach its peak. Only wine could let a person vent all his emotions and forget everything. Therefore, on such an occasion tonight, they would definitely not go home until they were drunk. There were no fathers and sons on the battlefield, and no brothers in the wine house. Qin Sheng really wanted to get drunk tonight because he had been depressed for too long. He had been on tenterhooks all the time, not to mention drinking. But tonight, he didn't need to worry about anything anymore. He could get completely drunk. He didn't think about anything, didn't care about anything, and just drank to his heart's content. He really wanted to know what it would be like when he was completely drunk. Even if he was a mess, even if he lost his mind and acted like a drunkard, his sister would clean up the mess for him and send him home in the end. This was the first time in his life that he had been treated like this. Since Qin Sheng was so determined, the ending was self-evident. That night, except for Qin Ran, who only drank a little, the others were basically dead drunk. Qin Sheng was completely put down by them. He even went to the toilet to vomit a few times. When he came back, he drank and fell asleep. But Qin Sheng, who was asleep, had a smile on his face. Ma Wei-yang also fell asleep while drinking. She was a good drinker, so she wouldn't get drunk. But in order to help Qin Sheng, she, Fandaji, Zhang De, and the others had an internal conflict. That was why she ended up like this. Fortunately, although the others were drunk, they weren't completely unconscious. Qin Ran had asked these people how to deal with the funeral before drinking, so she had arranged everything in advance. Those who wanted to go home would be sent home directly. Those who didn't want to go home had already booked a room in the Guomao Hotel nearby, and sent someone to send them. After making arrangements for these people, Qin Ran took Qin Sheng back to the Sihiyuan. After all, it was not far from Wangfujing. Qin Ran had also called Uncle Gongsun, asking him to make a pot of tea to sober up and a bowl of porridge to warm up his stomach. In the Sihiyuan, Qin Chang'an had already gone to bed. If there was nothing else, his work and rest were very regular, almost never past 11 o'clock. So when Qin Ran took Qin Sheng back, only Gongsun was waiting. Qin Ran had a room in the Sihiyuan. It was already so late, so Qin Ran naturally wouldn't leave. As for Qin Shing, before knowing that he was coming back, Gong Sun had already asked people to tidy up the room next to Qin Ran's. Everything in the room was new. 2 bodyguards carried Qin Shing in. Qin Ran originally wanted to let Qin Shing drink some tea and porridge, but looking at the situation, she was afraid that he wouldn't wake up. It was better to let Qin Shing sleep directly. After settling Qin Shing down, Qin Ran came out of the room. Standing in the corridor outside, Gong Sun muttered, Ran, why did you let him drink so much? He wants to drink, so I let him drink. When he has drunk enough, he will feel comfortable, Qin Ran said disapprovingly. She hoped that Qin Shing would not hold back his feelings and try to vent them all, so that he could live a relaxed life. Chapter 373. Petty Tricks. Today's second update is here. Please vote for the strongest comeback. 5 free votes every day. Vote for the best work. In the morning, Qin Chang'an got up the earliest. It was still snowing outside, and some places on the road were frozen. Qin Chang'an did not go out to run, but continued to exercise in the basement gym. When Qin Chang'an came out after jogging, Gong Sun was already waiting for him in the dining room. Qin Chang'an found that today's breakfast was richer than usual. He asked confusedly, "What day is it today? Why is the breakfast so sumptuous?" Gong Sun poured milk for Qin Chang'an and smiled bitterly. "The sister and brother upstairs haven't woken up yet." Qin Chang'an's expression changed slightly. He did not expect that Qin Shing and Qin Ran stayed in the Sihiyuan last night, which was quite surprising. He thought that the sister and brother would not come back after they left. This was the first time that Qin Shing stayed in the Sihiyuan since he returned to Beijing, and Qin Ran also came back to live. This news made Qin Chang'an feel quite comfortable. Finally, he felt that this Sihiyuan was like a home, not just his residence. If both Qin Ran and Qin Shing could move back here and live there forever, he would naturally be happier. Gong Sun continued to explain, "They came back at 2:30 last night, so I did not disturb you." Qin Shing was a mess, and Qin Ran was also a little confused. "I guess they are still asleep now." "They drank?" Qin Chang'an frowned, but did not say anything more. There was nothing wrong with young people drinking. Wasn't he like this when he was young? Gong Sun hesitated for a moment and said, "How about I wake them up for breakfast?" "No, let them sleep for a while. You go out with me later, there are still some things to deal with today," Qin Chang'an said casually. Gong Sun agreed, and they sat down to eat breakfast. When Qin Shing woke up, it was already 10 o'clock. He opened his eyes, his mouth was dry, and he had a splitting headache. His stomach was also a little upset. Qin Shing was shocked to find that he was in a strange environment. He subconsciously broke out in a cold sweat and sat up abruptly. When he recovered his memory, Qin Shing let out a long sigh of relief. It was a false alarm. He thought it was the same situation as before, where he had to stay sober every time he got drunk. The situation last night was different, because he drank with his sister and her friends last night. No matter how drunk he was, his sister would take care of him. Qin Shing did not know where he was, but he had a rough idea in his heart. He put on his clothes, got out of bed, pushed open the door, and walked out. When he saw the yard outside, he realized that he had finally returned to the Sihiyuan last night. "Young master, you're up." The servant at the door greeted him respectfully. Qin Shing was still not used to this form of address. He smiled bitterly and nodded. "Where is my sister?" "Miss Qin just got up. She's waiting for you downstairs for breakfast." The maid, who seemed to be in her 30s, replied casually. All of them had worked for the Qin family for many years, and the Qin family had treated them well, both in terms of salary and other arrangements. Qin Shing stretched himself and said, "Tell her that I'm going to take a shower." Qin Shing went back to his room and took a shower, but he did not change his clothes. His body reeked of alcohol and cigarette. However, he did not smoke last night, because he could tell that his sister did not like the smell of cigarette. The others also restrained themselves, so he did not smoke. In the dining room, when Qin Ran, who had already recovered, saw Qin Xing walk in, she laughed and said, "Are you uncomfortable?" "Uncomfortable?" Qin Xing nodded honestly. It was really uncomfortable. He had a terrible headache and his stomach was particularly uncomfortable. Qin Ran stared at him and said, "Do you know how to be uncomfortable? Last night when you were drinking with Zhang De and the others, where was your arrogant look? Why didn't I see that you were uncomfortable?" Qin Xing giggled. This was the mood when he drank. He drank to his heart's content. If he had to pretend to be polite when drinking, he might as well not drink at all. "Will you still drink in the future?" Qin Ran asked. Qin Xing sat next to Qin Ran happily and said, "You won't believe me even if I say no. But I really felt good yesterday. I should say that I completely blacked out. I don't remember what happened after that. By the way, how are they?" "Ponytail drank a lot of alcohol for you. Like you, she blacked out. In the end, she was picked up by her husband. The others are more or less the same. Those who should go home, and those who can't go home stay in the hotel. I just called them. Those who should go to work are still working, and those who should sleep are still sleeping." Qin Ran shook her head helplessly and said. Qin Xing picked up a glass of orange juice and said, "Sister Ponytail is so nice. If it were not for her last night, I might have already blacked out. What do you think? She is my best friend. Of course, she will be nice to you. You definitely don't remember that she insisted on introducing a girlfriend to you last night. She said that she was the daughter of an aunt in her husband's family. It was a mess. You even asked her to give you her number." Qin Xing was stunned. Qin Xing was dumbfounded. He did not expect that the future of the short film would be like this. He asked in surprise, "Really? Sister, don't lie to me. I am an upright person. Besides, I have a girlfriend." "I know. I have seen her," Qin Ran said casually. Qin Xing fell silent and did not say anything. Since he sent a message to Lin Su to tell her that he was safe before he went to Tsingtao from Zhejiang last time, he had not contacted Lin Su since then. He knew that Lin Su, who was in Ningbo, must be worried about him. He also knew that Lin Su must be waiting for him. However, so many things had happened recently that he could not accept it for a while. He could not calm down and had no time to contact anyone. During this period, he finally recovered. Qin Xing thought that he should tell Lin Su about it so that she could be completely at ease. However, Qin Xing did not have time to see Lin Su now. Moreover, he had promised Lin Su that he would go to Ningbo to pick her up in person. Now, he had the capital to face the Lin family directly. So when he went to pick up Lin Su, it was the time for him to propose marriage to the Lin family. He wanted to see the faces of the Lin family. Qin Xing could understand that the Lin family had never taken him seriously. But it would be a lie to say that he did not have any resentment. Although this society was so realistic, no one could bully a young man for being poor. Qin Ran thought that she had mentioned Qin Xing's sad story. She comforted him and said, "I know something. She is a good girl and deserves your lifetime protection. When you want to see her, I will accompany you to pick her up." "Okay." Qin Xing nodded with relief. After breakfast, Qin Ran took Qin Xing to the balcony on the second floor to bask in the sun and drink tea for a while. When it was almost time, she sent Qin Xing to Tongning. After all, Qin Xing had classes in the afternoon. In less than a month, it would be the new year. Today was the last class before the new year, so basically all the students came. Because there was a banquet in the evening, Qin Xing did not refuse out of politeness. On the way to Tsinghua University, Qin Xing had already called the assistant of the head teacher to explain that he had something to do at home in the morning. For rich and noble students like them, the assistant could understand. After all, they were all busy. When Qin Shing walked into the classroom, Han Su, who was sitting next to him, had already arrived. Today, this guy finally did not wear a hip-hop style anymore. He changed into a fairly formal black coat, which was a reasonable match. He looked much more sunny and handsome than before. After seeing Qin Shing, Han Su immediately joked, "Qin Shing, why didn't you come to class in the morning? Was it because you were too tired last night and couldn't get up in the morning? Young man, take care of your health. Don't always do that." Nothing good came out of a filthy mouth. Qin Shing did not bother to answer him. He directly scolded him with a smile, F***ck off. Han Su had long been used to Qin Shing's style. He was not afraid of being scolded. If he was scolded, he would treat him as a real brother. If people flattered him everywhere, he would feel really bored. It is said that you can bring a female companion to the banquet in the evening. Do you have a female companion? Do you want me to find one for you? You will definitely be satisfied, Han Su said, very willing to help others. Qin Shing directly shook his head and said, "No need." Because he was going to worship his mother tomorrow, and it was also the first time for him to see his mother after returning to Beijing, Qin Shing only planned to show up tonight and then go straight back to rest. At this time, Wei Li, who had been severely slapped in the face by Qin Shing last night, came over again shamelessly. He did not have a conflict with Qin Shing because of what happened last night. Seeing Wei Li, who was walking over, Qin Shing sighed in his heart. This guy is much more shameless than Han Su. Han Su was at most heartless, but this guy was the real shrewd one. "Qin Shing, let's talk?" Wei Li said directly. Han Su looked up at Wei Li. He did not have a good impression of him, so he did not bother to talk to him. He knew that Wei Li and Qin Shing seemed to know each other, so he lowered his head and continued to play the game. Qin Shing found it funny and said, "What is there to talk about between us? Qin Shing, I've said it before. I'm willing to be friends with you." "You may have misunderstood me," Wei Li explained slowly. He really did not know why Qin Shing had such great hostility towards him. Could it be that there was something wrong with the way he spoke that day? Qin Shing opened his notebook and read the financial analysis case in the afternoon. He replied casually, "You think too much. Then why did you pretend not to know me when I went over to say hello to you last night?" Wei Li was a little confused. If Qin Shing had said that he was his friend yesterday, he would have known that group of people, and their relationship would have been further improved. Qin Shing squinted and raised his head, saying, "It seems to be impolite to disturb others. Besides, how can I not know your little thoughts? Most people do not have great wisdom, but are full of small tricks." Qin Shing's words made Wei Li's face change, as if he had been seen through. He did not know how to respond to Qin Shing for a moment. Qin Shing said with interest, "We can be friends, but at least I have to know how we can be friends. What value do you have to me?" This sentence was a breakthrough for Wei Li. He could not help thinking about the meaning of Qin Shing's words. The more he thought about it, the more interesting he felt, but he did not understand it. At this time, the teacher today came. Wei Li left silently and could only continue to think about it in his heart. In the evening, Qin Shing and Han Su went to the last dinner before the New Year, which was held in a nearby five-star hotel. Han Su's female companion was still the beauty from the law school. Qin Shing did what he said and did not bring a female companion. After entering, Qin Shing said hello to the head teacher and familiar classmates and left after a short time. The next morning, when Qin Shing took a shower and changed into solemn clothes, Qin Ran was already waiting for him outside in her car. Chapter 374. An unfilial son. Today, I hope you will continue to vote for Lao Guan. After Qin Shing's mother passed away, the Zhu family and the Qin family argued over where to bury her. The Zhu family wanted to bury her in the Babaishan public cemetery. After all, the 2 elders of the Zhu family would be buried there after 100 years. In this way, their daughter could be closer to them. This was also their selfishness. But how could the Qin family agree? Wasn't old Master Qin's greatest forte in this lifetime the art of acupuncture? How could such a big thing be decided by the Zhu family? He had to consider the Qin family and find acupoints for his daughter-in-law. Therefore, old Master Qin traveled around Beijing and finally found a good tomb at the foot of the Great Wall in Huairou. In his words, the deceased in the tomb would be happy and comfortable in their next life. At the same time, it would be beneficial to their relatives in the world, such as Lively's children. Therefore, it was not without reason that Qin Chang'an's career had reached the peak in recent years. However, there were some variables in this tomb. Not everything was absolute. This had something to do with the reason why the old master had brought Qin Shing away. Only the old master knew it in his heart, although others did not understand it. Old Master Qin was a real tiger man who hid in the world. However, this kind of person was destined to have a hard life. He wandered from place to place and never had a rest. When he was old, he would die in a foreign land, unable to return to his root. But for old Master Qin, this life was worth it. Some people didn't care about how long they lived, but what they had experienced. Old Master Qin belonged to this kind of person. He was used to the ups and downs of too many great storms, the fate of a nation, the fate of a family, and the fate of every ordinary person. Those who were in high positions could only die nameless, and those who were unknown ended up in the imperial court. He was a person who peeked at the destiny of heaven and had seen the vicissitudes of life and the joys and sorrows of partings and reunions. God had already given him face by allowing him to live for so long. Therefore, it was worth it. He didn't care about what people would say about him. In the end, the Zhu family agreed with old Master Qin's decision, even though this place was too remote at that time. It could be said to be the wilderness where no one lived. Even Qin Chang'an had opposed the idea at that time. But how could he persuade old Master Qin? Old Master Zhu believed in old Master Qin's ability. After all, old Master Qin was an authority in this field, so he finally nodded and agreed. More than 20 years had passed, and the land of the motherland had been turned upside down. This place was no longer so desolate. A large cemetery had been built not far away, but the feng shui of this place was still a little worse. Not everyone had the same cultivation as old Master Qin. When Qin Ran drove Qin Sheng to the foot of the mountain, Gongsun was already waiting there. He had been familiar with what to prepare over the years. However, in addition to Gongsun, there was another car parked by the side. When Qin Ran parked the car, a middle-aged couple got out of the car. They were none other than Qin Ran and Qin Sheng's uncle and aunt. Qin Ran had called her uncle last night and told him that today was the anniversary of her mother's death. She wanted to take this opportunity to bring Qin Sheng to visit her mother. Qin Sheng had agreed. But he didn't expect his uncle to come back. He didn't say anything on the phone last night. After Qin Ran got out of the car, she walked to the 2 elders excitedly and said, "Uncle, Aunt, why are you here?" Zhu Weigua, who was dressed in casual clothes and a black coat, smiled and said, "Today is your mother's birthday. Qin Chang'an can't come, but you can replace him. I have to come. I haven't seen my sister for a long time. I want to report to her about the recent situation of the Zhu family, so that she can rest assured." Zhu Weigua's wife, Wu Yajun, said gently, Ran, we didn't plan to come. But this morning, your uncle said that he dreamed of your mother last night. Your mother asked us to take care of you and your brother. So we came here," she said gently. This woman's temperament was especially graceful and elegant. She looked kind and happy. Some people's lives were so good. Qin Ran smiled happily. In front of the elders, she was like a child who couldn't grow up. She knew that her uncle and aunt loved her the most, so she pulled Qin Sheng and said in a hurry, "Qin Sheng, call me aunt. Aunt bought you a lot of new clothes when you were young." Wu Yajun looked at Qin Sheng and felt a little touched. However, she restrained her emotions and did not show too much excitement. She came this morning because she wanted to see Qin Sheng. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Sheng had just come back in a bad state, Wu Yajun would have come with Zhu Weiguo on the same day. "Aunt," Qin Sheng said calmly. He was used to calling strangers in this way because they were all his relatives. They must have had a deep relationship in the past. However, after so many years, time had forgotten too many things. Wu Yajun gently hugged Qin Sheng, touched his hair and smiled. "In the blink of an eye, you've grown so big. I thought I would never see you again in this life. Fortunately, God is not so cruel." Qin Sheng also comforted his aunt and said, "Aunt, don't worry. I won't leave again, and I won't let you worry anymore." Good boy, good boy." Qin Sheng was so sensible. Wu Yajun was very happy. Finding Qin Sheng, the biggest stone in the heart of the whole Zhu family, was finally relieved. Zhu Weiguo thought it was almost time, so he said, "Let's go in first. After we finish our work, you can catch up during lunch." Wu Yajun let go of Qin Sheng, but still touched his cheek reluctantly. Qin Sheng was not used to being treated as a child recently. It took more than 10 minutes to walk from the side of the road to find Qin Sheng's mother's tomb. A few years ago, the surrounding area began to be developed, and some people wanted to occupy this place. Fortunately, Qin Chang'an knew it early and finally bought this piece of land with money through his connections, which could be regarded as a relief. Nominally, it was a tree farm, but in fact, except for a mausoleum keeper, there was no one else here. This mausoleum keeper was an old man from a nearby village. He was lonely and had nothing to do, so Qin Chang'an arranged for him to live here. In fact, there was nothing much to do. He just went there every day to make sure that no one would disturb him. The old man knew that at this time every year, people would come to pay their respects to the woman, so he waited at the gate early in the morning. He almost remembered all the people of the Zhu and Qin families, and knew when they would come. Every year, Qin Chang'an would come on this day, but this year, Qin Chang'an was not here. He was surprised and asked, "Lao's son, why didn't Lao Qin come?" "Brother Guo, Lao Qin has something to do today. This year, he asked his son and daughter to come here," Gong Sun explained casually. He had a good relationship with Brother Guo, who was the mausoleum keeper, and often arranged people to send things over. Brother Guo was an honest man who remembered the Qin family's kindness, so he felt more at ease here. The old man called Brother Guo was already 63 years old, but he was quite energetic. When he had nothing to do, he would wander around the mountain, and his health was better than that of the old people of his age. Qin Ran, Zhu Weiguo, and Wu Yajun all knew this old man, so they greeted him politely. Hearing Gongsuan's words, Lao Guo frowned and said, "Her son?" He had met all the people of the Zhu and Qin families, but it was the first time that he heard that the woman who was buried here had a son. He had been guarding here for nearly 10 years, but had never seen the woman's son, so he was very surprised. On the way, Qin Ran had already told Qin Sheng about the old man. For Qin Sheng, it was a great favor for him to guard his mother here, and not be disturbed by others. Therefore, Qin Sheng was very respectful to the old man, and said politely, "Hello, Uncle Guo. Thank you for your hard work these years." Although Lao Guo didn't understand, he smiled and said, "Not at all, it's my duty." Of course, Gongsun wouldn't explain anything to Lao Guo. He would ask him later. He chuckled and said, "Lao Guo, you go ahead. We'll go in." The group of people continued to walk forward. After passing through the forest and a small stream, they finally saw the lonely grave not far away. Compared to the unremarkable grave of old Master Qin at the foot of Mount Zhongnan, this grave was clearly more imposing. The grave was surrounded by bricks and tiles, and there was a 1-meter-high tombstone in front of it. The whole grave was surrounded by green pines and cypresses, and the surroundings were clean and tidy. It was winter, so all the trees had withered, and the flowers and grass had all withered. It looked a bit desolate. In spring, when everything woke up, it could be said to be a fairyland on earth. From spring to late autumn, different flowers and plants bloomed all over the mountains and field. Because Qin Shing's mother liked flowers, Qin Chang'an planted all kinds of flowers and plants here that could survive. When they walked to the front of the grave, the atmosphere became a bit sad. Qin Shing stared at the tombstone in front of him, on which was his mother's photo and name. The photo was still the most beautiful one he had seen in the old house. The words, "Tomb of the Loving Mother Zhu Qinghuan," were engraved below, and there was a blank space beside it. Qin Shing knew that it was left by Qin Chang'an. This grave must be a joint grave, and Qin Chang'an would naturally be buried here when he was old. Compared to the time when he saw his mother's photo in the old house, Qin Shing felt more emotional standing in front of the grave this time. No words could express his inner excitement. Gong Sun started to put the fruits and flowers on the table, while Qin Ran took out the incense paper that she had prepared. Zhu Weiguo and Wu Yajun stood at the side, looking around to see if there was anything that needed to be cleaned up. Then they stared at Qin Shing and Qin Ran. Zhu Weiguo was also a bit depressed. His sister had passed away for so many years, but he often thought of his sister's voice and smile, as if she was still alive. If she was still alive, how happy she would be, and Qin Shing would not be taken away by old Master Qin. With the current status of the Qin family, his sister could enjoy her old age in peace. Zhu Weiguo sighed. His sister was the smartest woman in the whole Zhu family, but it was a pity that she had a hard life. Wu Yajun held her husband's arm, but she did not say anything to comfort him. She had said it many times over these years. After Gong Sun put everything on the table, he retreated to the side. Qin Ran first lit the paper money, ignoring Qin Shing who was in a daze next to her. She murmured while burning the paper money, "Mom, I've finished my task. I've found your brother. Don't blame my father in the future. He has suffered more than anyone else these years. As for the future, you don't have to worry about it. I'll help you take care of my brother. I know you love this son the most, more than you love me. I used to be jealous, but later I realized how lucky I am." When the paper money was about to burn out, Qin Ran lit the incense and handed it to Qin Shing. "Okay, don't be in a daze. Light the incense for our mother." Qin Shing came to his senses and took the incense. After bowing 3 times, he inserted the incense into the incense burner in front of the tombstone. Qin Ran knelt down and kowtowed first, followed by Qin Shing. After Qin Ran kowtowed, she got up, but Qin Shing still knelt on the ground. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Mom, your unfilial son, Qin Shing, is back to see you. Rest in peace." In a word, those who heard it would be sad and shed tears. Chapter 375. Chapter 374 Guarding the Mausoleum, Second Update, Asking for Monthly Vote. By the way, please vote for the best work, the strongest counterattack. Qin Shing had said what he wanted to say in the old house that day, but his feelings at that time were not as deep as when he was kneeling in front of his mother's grave at this moment. His mother had been waiting for him in this lonely grave for more than 20 years in the remote suburbs, in the wild mountains. It was not hard to imagine how Qin Shing felt. It was said that when a child traveled 1,000 miles, his mother would worry about him. He had been away from Siju City for more than 20 years. Had his mother been worried and unable to rest in peace for more than 20 years? "You grew up with me, and I grew old with you." This was the most romantic promise between parents and children. It was a pity that Qin Shing and his mother did not have such a chance at all. How sad it was! There were many regrets in life, and some of them could be made up for as long as you were willing. However, some of them could not be changed at all. Regret was regret. Qin Shing knelt in front of the grave and did not want to get up. He continued, "Mom, you have been gone for more than 20 years, but I have never come to see you. I hope you can forgive me for being unfilial. I know you have been thinking about me for more than 20 years, and I have made you worry. I will come to see you often in the future and accompany you all the time, so that I can make up for the 20 years." Qin Ran could not stand it anymore. She was really afraid that she could not help crying again. She held Qin Shing and said, "Brother, get up. Our mother will not blame you. She knows that you have suffered more than her in the past 20 years. Now you are back, and our family is finally reunited. This is better than anything else. Our mother is happy from the bottom of her heart." At this time, Wu Yajun also walked over and held Qin Shing. She said, "Xing don't kneel on the ground. It is cold. If you get sick, your mother will feel sorry for you." Qin Shing was also embarrassed to be supported by his sister and aunt, so he stood up slowly. He seemed to see his mother in the photo smiling at him, and his eyes were full of tenderness. After the worship, Qin Ran was ready to leave with Qin Shing. However, Qin Shing asked them to wait here for a while. He wanted to walk around and see how the environment here was, so Gongsun accompanied him. Qin Ran and Zhu Weigua stood there and waited for Qin Shing. Zhu Weigua frowned and said, "How is it? How is the relationship between the father and son recently? Has there been any progress?" Wu Yajun also cared about it and waited for Qin Ran's answer. Although the Zhu family did not have a good relationship with Qin Chang'an, she still hoped that there would not be too many conflicts between the father and the son. After all, they had been separated for more than 20 years. Qin Chang'an was already so old. How many years could they spend together in the future? Qin Ran held her aunt's arm and said with a smile, "It's much better than before. The night before yesterday, I took Qin Shing back to the Sihiyuan for dinner. Qin Shing didn't refuse. During dinner, they even drank a bottle of white wine." Upon hearing such news, Zhu Weigua said happily, "Well, it looks good. It's good that there's progress." At this time, Wu Yajun asked, Ran, didn't you ask your father what he has planned for Qin Shing now that he's back? Do you want Qin Shing to take over?" Zhu Weigua didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he replied, "Do you still need to ask? That guy has worked hard all his life to accumulate such a huge foundation. Do you think he will hand it over to others? I know what you want to say. Don't worry, he won't hand Qin Shing over to our Zhu family to cultivate." Wu Yajun muttered, "What's so good about doing business? The risk factor is too high. Although he's doing well now, there are many unknown dangers hidden behind him. I think it's a good choice for Qin Shing to enter politics or join the army. Give him enough time to practice. With the help of our Zhu family's connections, he may have great achievements in the future." Zhu Weigua shook his head with a bitter smile as he said, "Then you have to persuade Qin Chang'an first. After all, he's not our son. It's not up to us to arrange his path." Wu Yajun sighed and looked at Qin Ran. Ran, tell me, what does your father think?" Seeing that Qin Shing was so favored and was still the same as before, Qin Ran was quite happy. Everyone cared about Qin Shing so much, which would make him feel the warmth of family love. He would also have a sense of existence in this big family. Qin Ran said, "Aunt, you know my father's temper. He can't wait to retire. Now that Qin Shing has finally come back, of course he will arrange for him to take over. Besides, I think based on my understanding of Qin Shing, he may not like a life with too many restrictions, such as politics or joining the army. Relatively speaking, doing business gives him more freedom, and it allows him to do what he wants to do. Some time ago, my father arranged for him to attend an advanced course in the School of Economics and Management of Tsinghua University. I don't think he has any resistance at all. He always attends classes on time and listens carefully. When he has no classes, He also listens in other departments of the School of Economics and Management. It shows that he is very interested in doing business. She also hoped that Qin Xing could take over her father's position and inherit the Qin family's business. This starting point would be much higher than others. If he wanted to enter politics or join the army, he had to take it step by step. Even with the help of the Zhu family, it was impossible for him to make a big step. Since Qin Ran had said so, Wu Yajun didn't say anything more. She just let Qin Xing make his own choice. They continued to wait here for a while. Half an hour later, Gong Sun and Qin Xing finally came back. Then Qin Xing announced a decision. He looked at everyone with a smile and said firmly, "Sister, uncle, aunt, I won't go back with you. I happen to be free before the spring festival, so I want to stay here to observe mourning for my mother. I want to make up for the regret of not being by her side and visiting her all these years." This news shocked everyone. They looked at each other and didn't know what to say for a while. However, Qin Xing's filial piety moved them very much. Qin Ran certainly didn't want Qin Xing to stay here. The environment here was so hard. So she objected, "Qin Xing, I know you are filial, but it is too hard here. You don't have to do this. I think our mother will feel sorry for you." "Elder sister, this bit of suffering is nothing to me. Uncle Guo won't live here for long. I'll just squeeze with him. Anyway, it's only for a month. I want to spend some time with our mother," Qin Xing said sincerely. It could be seen that no one could change his mind. Qin Ran still couldn't bear to let Qin Xing stay here. She continued, "You have suffered for so many years. I don't want you to suffer any more. Just listen to me." Qin Xing still insisted, "Sister, I am not that precious. If you miss me, you can come to see me at any time." Wu Yajun wanted to persuade Qin Xing, but she thought he was right. She could only turn to her husband for help. Zhu Weigua said slowly, Ran, listen to Xing. If he wants to stay here to observe mourning for his mother, just stay here. This is what he should do. Filial piety is the most important of all virtues. I think no one will stop him." Qin Ran thought that her uncle would help persuade Qin Xing, but it didn't occur to her that he would stand on Qin Xing's side. She could only sigh and look at Qin Xing helplessly. Zhu Weigua then said to Qin Xing, "Xing, I admire you for doing this. But you don't have to be so anxious. Go back and pack your things first. Then Gong Sun will ask someone to clean this place. You can move here tomorrow. What do you think?" Qin Xing nodded and said, "I will listen to you. Thank you for your understanding." Zhu Weigua patted Qin Xing's shoulder and said, "Okay, then I will go back first. I have arranged lunch at the farmhouse nearby. You should be hungry now." This matter finally came to an end. They left the cemetery and went to the farmhouse not far away by car. After Gongsun went back, he reported this matter to Qin Chang'an. Qin Chang'an was still indifferent and didn't express any opinion. But in his heart, his evaluation of his son improved again. Later, Qin Ran also called Qin Chang'an. She hoped that Qin Chang'an could persuade Qin Xing, because the conditions there were too harsh. Qin Chang'an smiled bitterly and said, "Even you can't persuade him. Do you think that he will listen to me? Let him do what he wants." Qin Ran knew that there was no turning back. She had to go to supervise in person and clean up the best living environment for Qin Xing so that he wouldn't have to suffer too much. Lao Guo, who guarded the mausoleum, lived at the gate of the cemetery. There were 2 bungalows there, one for himself and the other for sundries. Hearing that Gongsun told him that the woman's son would come here to observe mourning for her for a month, Lao Guo was shocked. The living environment here was not good. It was estimated that the woman's son couldn't hold on for more than a few days. Gongsun led some people to clean up the sundries room. It was not a difficult thing for the Qin family. They finished it in half a day. However, they followed Qin Ran's advice and didn't do anything reckless. After all, she knew Qin Xing's character better. If they did that, Qin Shing would obviously be angry. He came here to observe mourning for his mother, and it was natural for him to suffer. He didn't come here to enjoy himself. Therefore, after cleaning up the room, there was only a bed, a desk, a chair, a bookshelf, a wardrobe, and an air conditioner. There was nothing else. After Qin Shing returned to Tongning, he packed a few sets of clothes. The rest of the clothes were filled with books, including the courses and professional books that he had been learning during this period of time. He wanted to make use of this period of time to cram. He also brought along his laptop to look up some information. The next day, Qin Ran sent Qin Shing to the hospital in person. Lao Gua had been waiting at the door for a long time. Then he took Qin Shing to his room. Lao Gua couldn't understand this playboy in front of him. Your mother has been dead for so many years. Why didn't you come to observe mourning for her before? Now you think of it. What an unfilial son. I guess he is just pretending. Qin Ran followed Qin Shing into the room and asked with a smile, "How is it? Is the environment good?" Qin Shing knew that it must have been arranged by his sister. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so good. Just look at Lao Gua's room. But it didn't exceed his bottom line. Qin Shing smiled and said, "It's much better than I thought. Thank you, sister." Qin Ran snorted and said, "Again? Sister, if there's nothing else, you can go back. It's very cold in the mountain. You're not like me. I grew up in the mountain and can't stand the cold," Qin Shing said with concern. Qin Ran said with distress, "I want to stay with you for a while. I can't run away. I'll always be here. If you miss me, you can come to see me at any time. Besides, it's only a month," Qin Shing said with a smile. Qin Ran stared at the willful Qin Shing and didn't say anything. Qin Ran didn't stay here for long. She was urged to leave by Qin Shing again and again. Qin Shing watched her get in the car and leave. Then he turned around and walked back. Chapter 376. It couldn't be better. First update, Lao Guan has been working hard recently. I hope you can support him. Please vote more for the monthly and year-end review. Lao Gua was not tall and had dark skin. He walked with a limp and stooped body, so he could only guard the mausoleum here. There was no job for him anywhere. Besides, the salary here was not low. He could earn 5,000 yuan a month. How could an old man like him find such an easy job? Therefore, Lao Gua was dutiful and kept the whole park clean. He was afraid that the Qin family would fire him if they were not satisfied. Lao Gua was a farmer from a nearby village. The surrounding area had almost been developed. Lao Gua was supposed to be one of those who had been relocated to Beijing. Not to mention the downtown area, even in the suburbs, Lao Gua would have to pay a lot of compensation. Lao Gua, who had lost a lot of money, should be enjoying his old age with his children and grandchildren at home. Why would he guard the mausoleum here? Could it be that Lao Gua was a restless person and wanted to continue playing his role? Obviously not. There was a story behind it. Lao Gua's children were all ungrateful. They cheated him of all the money and drove him out of the house. No one was willing to take care of him. Lao Gua, who was homeless and lonely, was so pitiful. It happened that there was a job here, so the villagers recommended him to come here. Lao Gua didn't care about the job at all. As long as he could eat and live, he would do it. Not to mention guarding the mausoleum, as long as he had the ability, he would do it even if he had to dig a grave. Thus, Lao Gua persisted in this way, and it had been several years since then. When Qin Shing came back, he got a chair and a pot of tea. He poured tea for both Lao Gua and himself and said, "Uncle Gua, have some tea." Lao Gua murmured in his heart, but he didn't dare to taunt Qin Shing. After all, Qin Shing was the owner of the mausoleum. What if Qin Shing fired him? So he took the tea and said politely, "Little Qin, I'm a rough guy. Don't call me Uncle Gua. I'm not used to it. Just call me Lao Gua." After hearing his words, Qin Shing could understand him. Honest, ordinary people had always been like this. He smiled happily and said, "All right. Anyway, I will stay here for a month. I will call you Laogua. You can call me Shao Qin." "Good, good, good." Laogua nodded and said. Then he tasted the tea and said enviously, "Good tea, good tea. I've never tasted such good tea in my life." Of course, Qin Shing knew what to do. For an ordinary person with a small nose and eyes, a little favor was more useful than giving him real money. That was because real money would make him insatiably greedy, while a little favor could last for a long time. So he said, "I brought some with me. I'll leave them for you when I leave." "Ha ha ha, you can't do that." Laogua was happy in his heart, but he didn't say it. Qin Shing didn't continue to talk about this topic. It was enough for them to know each other. There were many interesting things in life. Dealing with people was the most interesting thing. Today's weather was really good. The warm sun shone on the whole half of the mountain. There were unknown birds chirping in the forest and the sound of spring water in the distance. Qin Shing was drowsy with a pot of tea and a book. Everything complemented each other. Before they knew it, it was lunchtime. Qin Ran wanted to send a chef to cook for them, but Qin Shing refused without hesitation. Qin Ran also wanted to send someone to bring them lunch every day, but Qin Shing refused again. He said he was not used to such a life and preferred to cook by himself. Qin Ran wanted to say something, but Qin Shing said directly, "Sister, I'm in mourning for our mother. You don't have to worry about me. I'm a grown-up and I can take care of myself. I'll call you if I need anything." Qin Ran felt sorry for her brother and was afraid that he would suffer here. Now that Qin Shing said so, she didn't care about him anymore. Laogua cooked here every day. There was rice, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, tea, pots, bowls, ladles, and bowls. Every morning, he would go to the nearby market to buy vegetables. He had gotten used to such a life over the years. It was lunchtime today. Laogua didn't know what Qin Shing had planned, so he said tentatively, "Little Qin, you stay here and continue to read. I'll cook for us." Qin Shing came to himself and quickly stood up. "Laogua, I'll cook from now on. You can buy vegetables, wash dishes and do the cleaning. But I can only eat vegetables during the morning period. If you're not used to it, you can go to a nearby restaurant and have a sumptuous meal. I'll pay for it." Laogua was surprised and quickly said, "How can I do that?" "That's settled. Show me what ingredients we have. I guess we have to make do with it today. I'll write you a menu later, and you can go out to buy them this afternoon." Qin Shing put down the book and followed Laogua to the kitchen. Laogua didn't expect to have such an unexpected harvest, which made him feel a little embarrassed. He didn't expect that this rich kid could cook, but he didn't know if it was delicious. 40 minutes later, Qin Shing made 3 dishes and a soup with the available ingredients. The soup was a simple tomato and egg soup. Laogua's eyes were wide open. After he tasted it, he gave a thumbs up and said, "Little Qin, it's delicious. I didn't expect you to be so good at cooking. I'm so lucky." Qin Shing smiled and said, "If it's delicious, you can have 2 more bowls of rice." After lunch, Qin Shing tidied up the things in his room. After Laogua went out to buy vegetables, he walked to chat with his mother. This month, he had enough time to have a good talk with his mother. The last time he stayed in the old house was too short. It was just a hurry. This time, he could tell her everything that happened in the past 20 years, so that she would know that her son didn't have a hard time in the past 20 years, so she could rest assured. In the following days, Qin Shing and Laogua got along well. Laogua's impression of Qin Shing was getting better and better. He couldn't find any fault with this young man, which completely changed his view of the spoiled rich kids. He had thought that this young man couldn't bear any hardships and wouldn't be able to hold on for more than a few days. He thought that this young man would leave soon. However, the way Qin Shing behaved made him really dumbfounded. Not to mention cooking, Even washing clothes was done by Qin Shing himself. He even washed the clothes for him conveniently. At the same time, Qin Shing took the initiative to do the heavy physical work, and never let Lao Gua do it himself. He never refused to run errands. Lao Gua felt that he didn't come here to guard the mausoleum, but to enjoy life. Qin Shing was much better than his ungrateful son and daughter. Why didn't he have such a filial son? This was the happiest and most comfortable time he had been guarding the mausoleum for so many years. It was a pity that it was only a month. Qin Shing's life was very regular, similar to the time when he was in Xiamen. In the early morning, he got up and ran along the mountain road, which was very familiar to him. He used to run like this in Zhongnan Mountains when he was a child, so he didn't feel tired at all. He ran for an hour and then practiced boxing. When he came back, Lao Gua had already bought breakfast. After breakfast, Qin Shing would chat with his mother with incense paper and flowers. These flowers were sent by someone sent by Qin Chang'an, who had persisted for so many years. They would be delivered punctually at 8 o'clock every morning, 7 days in a week. After spending half an hour with his mother, Qin Shing came back to make lunch. After lunch, he read books and drank tea. In the afternoon, he would go with Lao Gua to clean the flowers and plants in the mountain with a shovel and hoe. After dinner, Qin Shing would go back to his room to read and study. At about 9 o'clock, he washed up and went to bed. He woke up at 7 o'clock the next morning. Occasionally, Qin Shing would walk around with Lao Gua to get familiar with the surroundings, but he didn't go far. He planned to climb the Great Wall in the next 2 days. Half a month passed unconsciously. The spring festival was getting closer and closer, and the atmosphere in the nearby villages was getting more and more intense. But Lao Gua looked a little disappointed. One afternoon, Qin Shing and Lao Gua were sitting in the yard drinking tea and basking in the sun. Qin Shing had nothing to do, so he asked, "Lao Gua, I've been here for half a month. Why haven't your children come to see you? Or you don't have any children?" Hearing this, Lao Gua put down his teacup and lit a cigarette. He let out a long sigh and said, "How can I not have any children? I have 2 sons and a daughter, but they are all ungrateful people. Otherwise, I wouldn't have become homeless and come here to guard tombs. It's better that they don't come to see me. I'm happy here. Every time they come to see me, they just ask for money. My 2 sons are even worse. They beat me when I don't give them money. I don't know what I did in my previous life. God wants to punish me like this. If I had a son like you, my life would be worth it." The more Qin Shing listened, the more he frowned. He couldn't help asking, "Tell me in detail. I'll see if I can help." Lao Gua sighed again. Since he had nothing to do now, he might as well tell Qin Shing about what had happened in the past few years. More than 10 minutes later, Qin Shing finally knew what had happened. He didn't expect that an ordinary person like Lao Gua would have such a complicated and tragic story. Lao Gua's 2 sons and a daughter were really bad people. Your father raised you all by himself and waited for you to grow old and die, but he didn't expect you to be so cruel. Lao Gua, I'll figure out a way for you later. You can't let them get away with it. Qin Shing squinted and said. He had many ways to deal with such people. Lao Gua said carelessly, "Don't bother. I'm used to it. As long as they don't bother me, I'll be fine." They had been together for half a month, so they were familiar with each other. Then Lao Gua asked, "Little Qin, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask it or not. If it's not convenient for you, just pretend I didn't ask." "Ask away. I can tell you anything," Qin Shing said carelessly. Lao Gua said slowly, "I've been here for many years, and I know most of the relatives and friends of the Qin and Zhu families. But it's the first time I've met you and learned that your mother has a son. Why didn't you come here all these years?" Qin Shing smiled bitterly and said, "Since you've told me your story, I'll tell you mine." Therefore, Qin Shing briefly told Lao Gua the strange story that had happened to him, but it was not as complicated as it seemed. Lao Gua was stunned. He didn't expect Qin Shing's story to be even more magical than his. A few minutes later, Lao Guo finished the story. He shook his head and sighed. I see. No wonder I haven't seen you before. I didn't know we were all poor people. But you're better off than me. At least you can enjoy the rest of your life. Qin Shing smiled faintly and did not say anything else. Just like that, the day passed peacefully. The next day, a stranger came. Qin Shing didn't expect to meet one of the main characters in Lao Guo's story. Chapter 377. Tell me the truth. Asking for votes, asking for votes. During this time, Qin Shing and Lao Guo got along very well. Lao Guo was not very capable, but he was honest and reliable. On the day of the Laba festival, he cooked a pot of Laba porridge with ingredients bought from the village. It reminded Qin Shing of the first time he celebrated the spring festival with the Lin family in Xi'an. Qin Shing would leave in a week. Lao Guo was reluctant to let him go. Except for the old woman who had died many years ago, no one had been so nice to him. Lao Guo appreciated Qin Shing from the bottom of his heart, so he treated Qin Shing like his own son. Unfortunately, he couldn't be his real son. These days, Lao Guo didn't allow Qin Shing to do anything except cooking. He only asked Qin Shing to accompany his mother or study, unless Qin Shing insisted on doing something and Lao Guo couldn't change his mind, which made Qin Shing feel a little embarrassed. Qin Shing also knew that Lao Guo was a kind of person. If you treated him a little bit better, he would be more than happy to repay you wholeheartedly. Qin Shing couldn't understand why his children treated Lao Guo like that. Did dogs eat their consciences? Time flew by so fast. Half a month had passed unknowingly. During this period, Qin Shing was very relaxed. He directly turned off his cell phone in case he was disturbed by others, such as Han Su, who often called him. He almost blocked him. During this time, his sister Qin Ran came 3 times. Every time she came with clothes and food, for fear that Qin Shing would starve. Qin Chang'an came once, accompanied by Gongsun. They chatted for a while and then went to see Qin Shing's mother. When they came, Lao Guo often praised Qin Shing in front of them, which made Qin Shing feel a little ashamed. It was a sunny afternoon. Qin Shing drank tea and read a book, while Lao Guo slept with his eyes closed. People who didn't know them might think they were father and son. At this time, a sloppily dressed middle-aged man rushed into the yard on an electric scooter. He shouted from afar, "Oh, old master, you are living a carefree life. I heard that you have become rich recently. You even go to restaurants every few days." These harsh and mean words made Qin Shing raise his head subconsciously and look into the distance. He did not know who it was. He just put down the book in his hand and stood up. Lao Guo heard the familiar voice and woke up immediately. He asked in a trembling voice, "What are you doing here?" The man stopped his electric scooter by the side. With a cigarette in his hand, he walked over carelessly and said, "What do you think I'm here for? You've become rich recently. You should share some with me. The new year is coming. Your son doesn't have enough money to celebrate the new year. Get out of here. I don't have any money for you." Lao Guo stood up angrily, pointing at the man's nose and cursing. Qin Shing finally understood that the rascal in front of him was Lao Guo's son. He didn't expect that they would come to him before he went to find them. Qin Shing was not in a hurry to speak. He just squinted his eyes and looked at the idiot in front of him. The man laughed and said, "No money? Do you think you can get rid of me by saying that you have no money? No way. You gave all the money to boss and my sister and only left me a little. Now you should compensate me properly. I told you I don't have any money. If you don't leave, I'll call the police." Lao Guo had no way to deal with such a rascal. The man said disapprovingly, "Go to the police. I'll see what they can do to me. Even an upright official can't solve a family dispute. If you don't give me money today, believe it or not, I'll demolish your place and sell it for a little money. Lao Gua threw the cup in his hand at him directly and said, "Get out of here! I don't have a son like you. You're a sinner. F***CKU. How dare you hit me? Believe it or not, I'll destroy you." The man changed his face and shouted at Lao Gua angrily. How dare he call himself Lao in front of his father? Qin Shing's face darkened. Not to mention the fact that this idiot had bullied Lao Gua, he was furious that he had disturbed his mother's peace. The man really didn't know how high the sky was and how deep the earth was. Therefore, Qin Shing directly blocked the man's way and sneered, "Do you know where you are?" The man didn't know who Qin Shing was. He thought Qin Shing was the same as the old man, a guard of the mausoleum and a dog of a rich family. He scolded him directly, "It's none of your business. Get out of here. Don't get involved if you don't want to die. Since you don't know, I'll talk to you about something else. As a son, I dare not ask you to take care of the old man when he is old, but at least have some conscience. Your father raised you and your sister alone, and you know better than anyone else how hard it was. Look at what you've done. It's an insult to animals to say you're like animals." Qin Shing scolded him word by word, not giving any face to the idiot in front of him. Being scolded to the face by Qin Shing, the man was so angry that he said, "What the F***CK? Are you courting death?" After saying that, he threw a punch at Qin Shing. Unfortunately, Qin Shing was not an ordinary person. During this period, Qin Shing's physical condition had recovered to 80%. It was easy for him to deal with a small character like him. Qin Shing grabbed the man's arm and continued to say, "Thirdly, you don't even know who I am, but you dare to scold me and beat me. It's a miracle that a fool like you can live until now." Before the man could figure out what was going on, Qin Shing had already made his move as fast as lightning. He grabbed the man's neck and pulled him down abruptly. Following that, he lifted his knee and hit the man's face directly. The man was completely stunned in an instant. However, this was just the beginning. Qin Shing didn't intend to let him go so easily. Ignoring the man's bloody face and holding his head and moaning, he kicked him to the ground. Then he grabbed a chair and directly smashed it on the man. After venting his anger, Qin Shing scolded, "My mother is buried here, and you dare to disturb her. Are you F***king looking for death?" The man curled up on the ground and didn't dare to fight back. Then he realized that he had met a tough guy. He cursed Qin Shing fiercely in his heart, but he also knew that a wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. This was his territory. As long as he got out of here, he could easily find dozens of people to kill Qin Shing. Then he would not be so arrogant. Lao Gua, who was standing next to him, was already scared. He didn't expect Qin Shing to be so fierce. At first, he was worried about Qin Shing, but now he began to worry about his unfilial son. No matter what, this was his son. He was afraid that Qin Shing would continue to beat him. If he accidentally killed him, it would be a big problem. "Little Qin, he is not sensible. For my sake, please let him go." Lao Gua grabbed Qin Shing's arm and begged for mercy. Qin Shing sighed and said, "Lao Gua, you are too kind. In this society, kind people are always bullied." While Qin Shing and Lao Gua were talking, the man immediately jumped up and ran away on his motorcycle. After he was far away, he dared to say to Qin Shing, "You F***king wait for me. I'll call someone over to kill you." "Okay, I'll wait. If you don't come, you'll be my grandson." Qin Shing sneered. A clown was a clown after all. It was hard for him to rise to the top. That was all he could do, so he was just cannon fodder. After the man ran away on his motorcycle, Lao Gua began to worry about Qin Shing again. He hurriedly said, "Little Qin, you'd better run. That guy will definitely come back. He knows a lot of gangsters here. I'm afraid you'll be in danger." Qin Shing didn't take it seriously and said, Lao, it's okay. The sky won't fall. I'll deal with it today. You have to be ruthless to some people. You can't reason with them, but I have to reason with them. Lao still wanted to say something, but Qin Shing had already stood up and walked to his room. He was going back to get his phone. He could deal with this kind of thing, even if there were 8 or 10 gangsters, they couldn't do anything to him. But not today. On one hand, he couldn't disturb his mother's peace. On the other hand, he had to deal with this trifle for Lao. Therefore, he had to call Uncle Gongsun and ask him to send someone over. An hour later, Qin Shing took a chair and sat on the roadside outside the cemetery, quietly waiting for Lao's second son to come to take revenge. But there were several cars parked not far from him, and the people in them were all well-known gangsters in this area. Qin Chang'an didn't need to ask him to do such a trivial thing. Gongsun just made a phone call to arrange it. Sure enough, this guy finally came. 3 vans rushed over, looking travel-worn. Qin Shing appreciated this point. At least he did not shoot his mouth off. Qin Shing stood up and was ready to welcome his friends. Before the van came to a complete stop, more than 10 men rushed out of the van and directly surrounded Qin Shing. Each of them looked ferocious, as if Qin Shing had dug up their ancestral graves. As the victim, Lao's second son accompanied a young man who looked like a big brother and got out of the van unhurriedly. "Big brother, this is the guy who beat me. You must help me get back my face today." Lao's second son pointed at Qin Shing and said with a wronged face, like a young wife who had been wronged. This young man who looked like a big brother was wearing a thin down jacket. His chest was exposed even in the middle of winter, as if he was afraid that no one would be able to see his valiant tattoos. Not to mention his colorful hair, he looked like he was a gangster, and he spoke for gangsters. "Bro, where are you from?" the big brother asked arrogantly. Qin Shing smiled and said, "I'm a good man, not a gangster." Hearing this, the big brother didn't have to be afraid anymore. He said directly, "Then tell me, what should you do with my brother? Do you want an arm or a leg? Can I pay for it?" Qin Shing deliberately joked. The big brother's eyes lit up, and he said happily, "Good, you're quite smart. Then it depends on your sincerity." "You really believe it?" Qin Shing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The big brother was irritated and said angrily, "How dare you trick me? Do you want to die?" Many gangsters moved closer to Qin Shing. As long as the big brother said a word, they could eat Qin Shing alive in an instant. Qin Shing sneered and said, "Are you sure you want to fight with me?" The big brother didn't understand what Qin Shing meant and said angrily, "Are you kidding me?" Qin Shing raised his arms to the top of his head and clapped unhurriedly for a few times. This was the signal that they had agreed on. After Qin Shing's action, all the cars parked on the roadside drove over, blocking the whole road in an instant and encircling all of them. At first, these gangsters and their big brother didn't understand what the man in front of them was going to do. When they did, they immediately became nervous. They were ambushed. However, this was not the end. The main point was that when they saw the group of people getting out of the car, they instantly felt like dying. Was this a F*King movie? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.